Chapter 332. The 100,000 Mountains? The seed of the 10,000 bestial flames was actually in the 100,000 mountains. This wasn't the first time Bu Fong had heard of the 100,000 mountains. Back when he was in the Western Mystery City, he had faintly seen the outline of the 100,000 mountains. It was said that the 100,000 mountains was a vast mountain range that was filled with spirit beasts and spirit materials. It was a very famous place in the southern region. The 100,000 Mountains was also known as a natural barrier in the southern region. The hidden dragon continent was vast and boundless, and the southern region was merely a corner of it. After crossing the 100,000 Mountains, one would be able to leave the southern region and step into the boundless land of the hidden dragon continent. However, it was extremely difficult to cross the 100,000 Mountains. If one's cultivation wasn't high enough, he would be courting death if he stepped into the 100,000 mountains. The 10,000 bestial flames appeared in the 100,000 mountains. This was beyond Bu Fong's expectations, but it didn't surprise him too much. Bu Fong was deep in thought as he wiped his wet hair. The 100,000 mountains was rich in natural resources and ingredients. After all, it was a continuous stretch of mountains, so there were bound to be many delicacies. Even on Earth in his previous life, the primeval forests were also rich in natural resources. There were countless precious ingredients and medicinal herbs, not to mention the vast mountains and rivers of the hidden dragon continent. Therefore, Bu Fong had to think about what he needed to prepare for the trip to the 100,000 mountains in 3 days. The imperial city of the Light Wind Empire. Inside the imperial palace's courtyard, Jean Kuan seemed to be treading on the wind as he dashed into the courtyard with Elder Sun in his hand. He threw Elder Sun, who was still in a daze, onto the ground. Jean Kuan anxiously dashed into the room, grabbed a pot of tea, and poured it into his mouth. The spicy taste that almost made him ascend to heaven had yet to dissipate. He couldn't care less about the scalding hot tea in his mouth as he gulped it down. The servants in the courtyard were all frightened to the point of panic, and they kept passing tea to Jean Kuan. After drinking 7 or 8 pots of tea in a row, the spicy taste in his mouth subsided. However, he could still feel the burning sensation on his lips. It felt as though his lips were being roasted, becoming swollen sausages. Letting out a long breath, Jean Kuan sat on his seat and panted heavily. He kept sticking out his tongue, trying to get rid of the burning sensation in his mouth. His suspicions about the store's supreme beast slaying the Shura sect venerable were dispelled after this probing. A single dish almost killed him. This restaurant's methods were simply inconceivable. One had to know that he was a supreme being expert. Furthermore, he was a body cultivator supreme being. The toughness of his physical body was so frightening that he wouldn't even frown if he were to eat a mountain of chili peppers, let alone chili peppers. However, he didn't know what kind of chili was added to that delicious dish, but 2 bites made him cry. It was simply too embarrassing. He was the ferocious hall master, yet he was crying over a plate of food. Elder Sun fell to the ground with his swollen lips. He had yet to recover, but Jean Kuan gradually fell into deep thought. Baijan, who was in the neighboring courtyard, was also lost in thought. As a force not weaker than the godly hall of the wildlands, the White Cloud Villa was naturally wary of this store. The two of them had basically reached a consensus. This Bu Fong was definitely not someone from the Light Wind Empire or the southern region. Regardless of whether it was the mysterious 9th grade puppet or the lazy supreme beast lying at the entrance, neither of them were experts from the southern region. They were well aware of the supreme being experts or supreme beasts in the southern region. Apart from the White Cloud Villa, the godly hall of the wildlands, the Serpentmen City, the Celestial Arcanum sect, and the Clear Sky Pagoda, only the Shura sect had a supreme being expert. However, since the store had killed the Shura sect venerable, it was obvious that it was not someone from the Shura sect. There were only 2 supreme beasts in the 100,000 mountains and 1 in the wildlands. Supreme beasts were much rarer than human supreme beings. This was also the reason why they were so surprised when they found out that there was a supreme beast guarding the store. Jean Kuan originally wanted to settle the matter between Xiaoyu and Xiada, but he didn't expect the store to be so powerful. Hence, he naturally threw this matter to the back of his mind. The matter with the Shura sect had temporarily come to an end. The experts from the White Cloud Villa and the Godly Hall of the Wildlands also received private messages from their respective forces and left the Imperial City. The next day, Ji Qingxue respectfully sent off the two Supreme Being experts from the White Cloud Villa and the Godly Hall of the Wildlands. He heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. These two Supreme Beings always gave him a sense of oppression in the Imperial City. The towering, immeasurable mountain pierced through the clouds. The simple and unadorned Celestial Arcanum sect. On the Celestial Arcanum Square, the disciples of the Celestial Arcanum sect were diligently cultivating. At the side of the plaza, there was a small wooden hut. A creaking sound came from the door of the wooden hut. Then, an elderly figure walked out of the wooden hut. The old drunkard, who was lazily lying in a corner of the square and basking in the sun, immediately straightened his body. He looked at the elderly figure in astonishment and hurriedly walked over respectfully. "Supreme Elder, why did you come out?" The old drunkard put away his wine gourd. His entire body reeked of alcohol, but he still asked respectfully. The Celestial Arcanum Sect's Supreme Elder warmly looked at the old drunkard, stroked his white beard, and said, "Don't keep on drinking, especially in front of the disciples. It's not good for you." The old drunkard laughed awkwardly and rubbed the back of his head. The Supreme Elder's gaze shifted to the disciples of the Celestial Arcanum Sect, who were training vigorously on the square, and a smile appeared on his face. However, this smile did not last for long, as it was drowned by a trace of worry. The Shura sect is making such a big move. It's obvious that they are planning to rise again. However, in order for them to rise again, they still need the most important catalyst, and this catalyst is about to appear, the Supreme Elder muttered to himself. The old drunkard was a little confused as he listened to the Supreme Elder's words. The sect master is in a critical moment of closed-door cultivation. If the rest of us don't have enough cultivation, we might die in vain if we go. Looks like I'll have to make this trip myself. A smile appeared on the Grand Supreme Elder's wrinkled face. It's been so many years since I've left the immeasurable mountain. I do miss the outside world. I wonder how many people in the southern region still remember my name. Early in the morning, sunlight shone into the store. The craftsmen sent by Ji Qingxue were quite efficient. After a few days of reconstruction, many buildings have been erected around the store. This caused the originally spacious environment to suddenly shrink. There was another big event that happened during the past few days. It was the reopening of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant in another corner of the Imperial City. The rich and overbearing owner of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant, Qian Bao, directly spent a large sum of money to purchase a large restaurant in the Imperial City. Then, he reopened it according to the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's model. On the day of the reopening, the entire city was in an uproar. Many people rushed to the Immortal Phoenix restaurant to show their support. Bufang lazily reclined on a chair and basked in the sun. A few customers in the store were eating their dishes with satisfied smiles on their faces. After waiting for the customers to leave, Bufang stepped into the kitchen and prepared to instruct Xiao Xiaolong. Xiao Xiaolong's expression was becoming more and more haggard. However, his cooking was still methodical. This made Bufang feel quite satisfied. "I will be leaving the Imperial City again tomorrow. I might be gone for a few days. The store will be depending on you for the next few days," Bufang said as he looked at Xiao Xiaolong. "Owner Bu is leaving again?" Xiao Xiaolong glanced at Bufang in astonishment. However, the expression on his face did not change much. He was already used to Bufang's antics. "Okay," Xiao Xiaolong answered concisely. Bufang blinked and indifferently looked at Xiao Xiaolong. He furrowed his brows and continued to ask, "How are General Xiao Meng's injuries?" At the mention of Xiao Meng's injuries, Xiao Xiaolong's eyes trembled and a trace of sorrow appeared on his face. The imperial physician said that the poison has already spread to his internal organs. He won't be able to live for long. Xiao Xiaolong suddenly raised his head and looked at Bufang with eyes full of hope. "Owner Bu, do you have any way to save my father? I beg you, please save him." Bufang sighed. It was not that he did not want to save him, but he did not have the ability to do so. The poison was obviously different from the poison in the southern city's second master's body. Even if his demonic fish meat was made into an elixir cuisine, it would not be able to save him. His relationship with the Xiao family was not bad. Xiao Xiaolong was the first customer of his store. If he could save him, Bufang would do it. However, he cannot. System, do you know what elixir cuisine can cure General Zhao's poison? Bufang asked the system. Perhaps the system had a way. However, Bufang did not have much hope. When the host obtains the 10,000 bestial flames and uses the black turtle constellation wok to cook the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, there is a chance to cure the poison. Chapter 333. When Bufang heard the system's words, his face was filled with surprise. In order to obtain the 10,000 bestial flames and use the black turtle constellation wok to cook the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, the dish would be able to detoxify the poison in Xiaomeng's body. However, Bufang didn't even know what poison was in Xiaomeng's body. Could the Buddha jumps over the wall soup be enough to detoxify the poison in Xiaomeng's body? Bufang's mind was filled with doubts. However, when he learned about the ingredients needed to cook the mortal grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup, the doubts on his face dissipated. After all, the mortal grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup required extraordinary ingredients. Moreover, the god of cooking said the black turtle constellation wok might be able to detoxify the poison. The principle of detoxification should be that no matter what kind of poison it was, it should be detoxified. Well, this was Bufang's conjecture. As for the specifics, Bufang naturally didn't know. Wait for me to come back. Maybe I will have a way. At this moment, I don't have any way to help General Xiaomeng. Bufang looked at Xiao Xiaolong and said calmly. Xiao Xiaolong was taken aback. Then, his face lit up with excitement. What did Honorbu say? Did he say he could cure his father? Was this true? Bufang didn't pay attention to Xiao Xiaolong, who was gradually becoming wild with joy. Instead, he turned around and walked to his stove. After practicing his carving and cutting techniques for a while, he returned to his room. He had to start preparing the ingredients and seasonings for the trip to the 100,000 mountains. The night was always somewhat tranquil. Above the northwest plain, the western mystery city stood leisurely like a proud giant, emitting its majestic aura. Looking up from the western mystery city, one could see a mountain range rising and falling in the dark night. The mountain range was covered by a hazy mist, making it a little blurry to look at. On the road to the mountain, a wobbly carriage made of spirit beasts was moving slowly, stirring up a cloud of dust. Finally, after traveling for a while, the carriage came to a stop. The curtain was lifted, revealing a handsome, expressionless face. Bufang's thin body walked out of the carriage, followed by a huge iron puppet. The coachman took a puff of his pipe and said to Bufang, "Young man, this is the entrance to the 100,000 mountains. If you go any further, I won't be able to send you in. The 100,000 mountains is very scary. There are spirit beasts that eat people. You have to be careful when traveling alone." The coachman kindly reminded. After the coachman reminded him, he shook his head. It was another young man who was tempted by the 100,000 mountains. If he could walk out of the 100,000 mountains alive and bring back 1 or 2 precious mountain treasures, he would be able to live for the rest of his life after selling them. Many youths entered the 100,000 mountains for the sake of the mountain treasures. However, only a few of them were able to walk out alive. Spirit beast hordes often occurred in the northwest plains, and the 100,000 mountains was the source of the spirit beast hordes. This was the source of the disaster. Youngsters nowadays were willing to throw away their lives for money. The old coachman took another puff of his pipe and coughed. Then, under the gaze of Bufang, he urged the spirit beast carriage to turn around and head back. Bufang wore a long robe, and his hair was tied up with a velvet rope. His face was fair and clean, and he wore an indifferent expression. He stood at the entrance of the 100,000 mountains. The entrance was incomparably gloomy, and when he looked inside, he felt as though the entrance was a terrifying black hole that could swallow people whole. Both sides of the entrance were covered with sinister vegetation. Patting Xiao Bai's belly, Bufang let out a light breath and walked toward the entrance. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flickered, and he followed behind Bufang. This time, Bufang didn't bring Xiao Bai's clone to the 100,000 Mountains. Instead, he brought the real Xiao Bai, whose combat prowess was even more terrifying. This was also arranged by the system. It was obvious that the mission to obtain the 10,000 bestial flames wasn't easy. Otherwise, the system wouldn't have been so kind as to allow Bufang to bring Xiao Bai's real body out. A human and a puppet walked in the darkness, and soon they entered the pitch-black entrance. The 100,000 Mountains were a continuous chain of ups and downs, and it was vast and boundless. This entrance was the closest entrance to the 100,000 Mountains from the Western Mystery City. Walking in the forest, Bufang could feel an ice-cold chill, which was caused by the emptiness of the forest. Although it wasn't winter, the temperature here wasn't any weaker than that. In the vast border city, the Blood Guard's cross-legged figure suddenly shook. He suddenly felt a violent tremor. He opened his eyes and saw that the huge black pagoda was actually shaking slowly. The Blood Guard's mind relaxed, and then he felt the black pagoda soar into the sky. A graceful figure stepped out from the black pagoda. Behind this graceful figure was a figure that was completely shrouded in pitch-black true energy. Judging from the figure, one could tell that it was a man. The black pagoda hovered in the air for a few rounds, then suddenly shrank, and finally merged into the High Priestess's palm. The High Priestess respectfully bowed to the figure shrouded in black energy. The figure nodded and turned his gaze to the Blood Guard, who was staring at them. The Blood Guard's entire body shivered, and he felt his blood rushing to his head. Sect Master. The Blood Guard's pupils shrank, and he shouted in surprise and fear. Did the Shura sect Overlord finish his secluded cultivation? After so many years, the Overlord appeared once again to lead them, to let the Shura sect's glory shine upon the southern region once again, and to strike fear into the hearts of the forces there. Let's go. In order to refine the departed soul orb and the soul essence within the soul congregation array, we need a catalyst. This catalyst is very important, and we cannot afford to lose it. I have waited for so many years for this catalyst to mature, the Shura sect Overlord said. Then, a mass of black energy floated into the distance. The High Priestess's eyes flashed under her mask. Her sparkling feet stepped on the air, and she followed the Shura sect Overlord's footsteps. Their figures gradually faded into the darkness of the night. The Blood Guard stood up and looked at the empty ground in Border City. The vast black pagoda had disappeared, and there was nothing left for him to protect in Border City. It was time for him to join the other Blood Guards and become one of them in battle. When Ashura's sect was completely awakened, the entire southern region would be their territory. White Cloud Villa. Amidst the misty white clouds, a group of exquisite and magnificent buildings stood tall. Each of the buildings was arranged in neat rows, and they were surrounded by white clouds and spirals. It was like a fairyland. Among the pavilions, terraces, and pavilions, there was a small pond. White steam rose from the pond, and a small boat could be faintly seen. A figure was sitting cross-legged on the boat. The figure leisurely fished, and the faint sound of water could be heard. Occasionally, the fishing rod would shake, and a fish would take the bait. The shaking fishing line stirred up the calm pond, and ripples appeared on the surface of the pond. Baijan's figure gently floated over, and he landed on a veranda far away from the pond. He looked at the small boat in the pond from afar. Villa Lord, there is a secret letter from the Celestial Arcanum sect. Baijan's complexion was somewhat grave. The Celestial Arcanum sect was the most mysterious force in the southern region, and all the other forces respected it. Since the Celestial Arcanum sect had personally delivered a secret letter, it was no small matter. Swoosh! The small boat moved even though there was no wind, and it quickly landed on the shore. A middle-aged man wearing a straw raincoat and a conical bamboo hat slowly stepped down from the boat. He carried a fish basket on his back, and he walked toward Baijan with a smile on his face. Oh, the Celestial Arcanum sect personally delivered a secret letter? Could it be regarding the Shura sect? The middle-aged man raised his eyebrows, and he asked in astonishment. Baijan naturally didn't know the contents of the secret letter, and he handed it over to the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man put down the fish basket, and he wiped off the water on his hands. He took the secret letter from Baijan's hands and carefully read it. After he finished reading it, a faint blue flame ignited on the secret letter, and it was quickly burned to ashes. It seems like it's time for me to go out for a walk. The middle-aged man suddenly laughed heartily, and his laughter resounded throughout the White Cloud Villa. Baijan's face was filled with confusion, but he didn't ask too many questions, so he followed the middle-aged man. The atmosphere of the several powerful forces in the southern region suddenly became somewhat heavy. The peak experts of the various powers all set out one after another, and this caused everyone to be extremely shocked. The peak experts of the various powers were experts who stood at the peak of the southern region, and every time they set out, they would cause a huge commotion. This time, there would definitely be a huge commotion. At the entrance of the 100,000 Mountains, regardless of the commotion caused by the other powers, a skinny figure was leisurely walking toward the depths of the 100,000 Mountains. Chapter 334. The 100,000 Mountains was incomparably quiet at night. As he walked along the mountain path, he could feel the cold mountain breeze blowing past him. The deeper he walked, the colder it became. As soon as he entered the 100,000 Mountains, the atmosphere changed drastically. The narrow path was covered with fallen leaves. Some of the leaves had rotted and emitted a unique smell. It was slightly sour and mellow like wine. Amidst the silence, the melodious chirping of insects could be heard. The chirping of these insects rose and fell, forming a pleasant symphony. Creak, creak. Bufong stepped on the withered leaves that covered ground. These leaves are like a layer of soft cotton. As he stepped on them, they sank slightly, giving him a different feeling. The moonlight seemed to be covered by the dense foliage. These pine trees blotted out the sky. Because they were in the primitive 100,000 Mountains, every ancient tree was extremely luxuriant. The branches spread out like a demon brandishing its claws and fangs. Anyone who walked in such an environment would feel their hair stand on end. However, with Xiao Bai standing behind Bufong, he felt more at ease. Patting Xiao Bai's stomach, Bufong seemed to have boosted his courage and continued walking. Although the 100,000 Mountains was terrifying, it was an indisputable fact that it was rich in natural resources. After walking a few steps, Bufong's nose twitched slightly. He raised his eyebrows, and his gaze fell on a small blade of grass on a small hill between two ancient trees. It was a scarlet spirit grass, and it emitted a pungent smell. It was like the smell of blood, and it made one wrinkle their nose. Heart blood grass. This is a 5th grade spirit grass. Bufong's eyes lit up, and he slowly walked in front of the spirit grass. Although the heart blood grass was scarlet, it was indeed beautiful. Its swaying body was like that of an enchanting beauty. There were spots on its body, and it was extremely beautiful. Sizzle, under its beauty, there was naturally a terrifying killing intent. A small blood-red snake slowly crawled out from behind the hill. Its scarlet scales seemed to be shining brightly. Its pitch-black tongue flicked out slightly, and its snake eyes stared at Bufong. A rank 5 spirit beast. Bufong was taken aback for a moment, but he quickly figured it out. After all, it was a spirit herb. Even if it was only a rank 5 spirit herb, it was still a rare treasure. Naturally, it would be guarded by a spirit beast. This was also the reason why the 100,000 Mountains was so dangerous. That was because it was filled with treasures. These treasures nurtured these spirit beasts, and these spirit beasts guarded these treasures. The two complemented each other and survived together. The little red snake stared at Bufong for a long time. Then its pupils shrank. With a hiss, it shot toward Bufong like a bolt of lightning. Anyone who dared to covet its treasures must die. This little snake was ferocious and extremely fast, An ordinary 6th-grade battle emperor would find it extremely troublesome to deal with this blood-colored little snake. However, Bufang was very calm. He was a man who could be called a battle saint. A 7th-grade battle saint had its own strengths. He didn't even bother to use his God of Cooking set. He circulated his true energy, and as the little snake shot toward him, his arm quickly reached out to grab it. His palm turned into a claw, and he grabbed the vital spot of the little snake. Judging from the color of the little snake, it was obvious that it was a venomous snake. Bufang naturally had to be more careful. True energy gushed out, and Bufang focused his eyes. He used a unique technique to break the vital spot of the little snake. The little snake's body trembled, and with a weak hiss, it fell limply into Bufang's hand. As a chef, he naturally had his own techniques when handling these ingredients. He pinched the snake's head and tail with both hands, curled the little snake into a ball, and casually threw it into the system's dimensional storage. Without the interference of the guardian spirit beasts, Bufang easily plucked the spirit herb. A majestic spirit essence gushed out from the spirit herb, and Bufang was slightly surprised. This heart blood herb was not young, and its quality was very high. It was not easy to walk in the forest at night, and Bufang didn't plan to go far. He wanted to find a place to rest and wait for daybreak. However, in the process of finding a place to rest, Bufang also collected a lot of spirit herbs. Although this place was considered to be in the 100,000 mountains, it was not considered to be in the depths of the 100,000 mountains. Therefore, 7th and 8th grade spirit herbs had yet to appear. He piled up a pile of withered leaves and ignited them. Billowing smoke rose into the air and soared into the sky. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Bufang blankly stared at the bonfire. Xiao Bai's chubby figure was also sitting in the distance. Its mechanical eyes flickered, and it would occasionally use its big hands to scratch its round head. In the quiet forest, only the sounds of insects and beasts could be heard. It was a little creepy. Bufang was in a daze for a while. Then, feeling a little bored, he found a few withered branches and put them together. He took out a black iron wok from the system's dimensional storage. This iron wok wasn't big, but it was more than enough for cooking. On a long journey, especially in the mountains, an iron wok was a must. Because there were many delicacies in the mountains, Bufang naturally wouldn't forget to bring an iron wok. When the spirit spring water in the wok started to boil, it emitted a hazy vapor. The vapor contained a little spirit energy, and it was incomparably fresh. Bufang scooped up a spoonful, blew at the steam, and drank a mouthful. He felt a wave of warmth spread through his body. Exhaling, a green smoke curled up from Bufang's hand, and the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. He took out the blood-colored snake that he had just killed from the system's dimensional storage. The dragon bone kitchen knife in Bufang's hand twirled, and he gently made a cut on the snake's abdomen. His fingers danced, and was almost dazzling. His movements were skillful and fast, and he easily peeled off the snake's skin. After dealing with the internal organs, Bufang used clean water to wash the snake's body. This snake was extremely poisonous, so he naturally had to wash it clean. Although a snake's entire body was a treasure, Bufang didn't really care about it. He didn't hold back the snake's gallbladder, and he only cared about the snake's meat. Compared to the snake's gallbladder, which was a great tonic, he still felt that the delicious snake meat was more important. Swish! Bufang took out some dragon blood rice and poured it into the boiling spirit spring water. The grains of dragon blood rice were very bright, and in the spirit spring water, they were like sparkling gems. While waiting for the dragon blood rice to be cooked, Bufang began to process the snake meat. He cut the snake meat into small pieces, and the dragon bone kitchen knife kept chopping, turning the blood-colored snake meat into very fine pieces. After chopping for a while, the snake meat was stuck to a wooden board that Bufang had prepared. At this time, the dragon blood rice in the wok began to boil, and a rich fragrance slowly spread out from the wok. The essence energy of the dragon blood rice was very rich. As the rice grains rolled, the rolling essence energy seemed to transform into a roaring little dragon, which hovered above the iron wok. Holding the dragon bone kitchen knife, Bufong casually twirled it. He took the wooden board, and the minced snake meat on the board was cut into the wok. The boiling spirit spring water instantly swallowed the snake meat. The snake meat rolled for a while and directly sank to the bottom, as if it had been swallowed by the roaring little dragon. One by one, the minced snake meat was cut into the wok. Soon, he finished processing all the snake meat. The rich fragrance of the meat had already spread out from the wok. Along with the essence energy of the dragon blood rice, there was actually a unique feeling. Bufong's true energy rolled, and his palm covered the edge of the iron wok. He slightly narrowed his eyes, and he could feel the circulation of the spirit energy in the wok. Under the influence of the dragon blood rice and the boiling hot spirit spring water, the snake meat began to change. The essence chi and the essence chi contained in the dragon blood rice mixed together, turning into a unique fragrance. This rich fragrance rolled out and actually spread out in all directions. It was incomparably bright, and in this dark forest, it was actually as bright as a lamp. Bufong felt a little satisfied. This was the beauty of cooking. Even in this vast forest, he could still taste delicious food. Moreover, it could also make people feel a wave of warmth. The fragrance lingered in the air, slowly drifting in the forest. In the dark night, the forest ground let out a rustling sound. In the dark forest, greedy eyes flickered. Low and deep beast roars slowly resounded. One by one, spirit beasts gathered in the place Bufong had mentioned. Such a rich fragrance, such a rich essence energy, they couldn't resist it at all. Bufong retracted his palm from the edge of the wok. He gently exhaled, and his heart was a little excited. Finally, he finished cooking. The self-made snake balls dragon blood porridge should taste good. Bufong was full of confidence in his cooking skills. He took out a blue and white porcelain bowl from the system dimensional bag. Every time he went out, the system dimensional bag would be filled with things. To him, every trip was a culinary journey. Since it was a culinary journey, naturally, he couldn't do without all kinds of tools. Pots, bowls, ladles, everything was there. Scooping a bowl of bright red snake balls dragon blood porridge, Bufong's nose moved in front of the porcelain bowl, and he deeply inhaled. Instantly, a satisfied expression appeared on his face. Bufong scooped up a spoonful of bright red porridge with a blue and white porcelain spoon. There were a few tender snake balls on top of the porridge. The snake balls were boiling hot, and steam spread out from them. They were quite cute. Just when Bufong was about to pour the porridge into his mouth, Bufong's movements suddenly stopped. He heard a low and deep beast roar coming from the surroundings. Why was there a beast roar? Bufong was slightly taken aback. After pouring the snake ball's dragon blood porridge into his mouth, he picked up the porcelain bowl, stood up, and looked around in puzzlement. The moment he stood up, a rustling sound came from the surrounding bushes. Shadows of beasts slowly walked out from the darkness, and their ice-cold and greedy eyes stared at Bufong. The terror of the 100,000 mountains was finally revealed to Bufong. This was a pack of spirit beasts, a pack of fearsome killers in the 100,000 mountains. Chapter 335. In the pitch-black and gloomy 100,000 mountains, a series of rustling sounds rang out, and one spiritual wolf after another slowly emerged from the thicket. The eyes of these spirit wolves were green and filled with greed and killing intent as they stared at Bufong in the distance. Withered leaves were piled up, and the raging flames were still rising. The snake meat porridge in the pot was still steaming, and the rich aroma of the meat and dragon blood rice wafted out. Bufong held the blue and white porcelain spoon in one hand and the porcelain bowl of snake ball dragon blood porridge in the other. He stood there in a daze as he looked at the group of spirit wolves that were slowly encircling him. The spiritual beast, the green wolf, was around the 5th rank. A pack of green wolves was simply a nightmare for the people of the 100,000 mountains. A single wolf wasn't scary, but a pack of them would become the most terrifying nightmare in the 100,000 mountains. The reason why a pack of wolves was terrifying wasn't their numbers, but their order. They were like a well-trained army that knew how to force their prey into a difficult situation. They knew how to torture their prey's spirit and make them exhausted. In the end, the prey would become their food. A pack of starving wolves. Even if they encountered a rank 7 spirit beast, they would choose to surround and kill it. This was the reason why people didn't want to encounter a pack of spirit beasts in the 100,000 Mountains. Bufang was also amazed. He held the blue and white porcelain bowl and scooped a spoonful of snakeball dragon blood porridge for himself. This porridge was cooked to perfection. The tender snake meat was incomparably delicious and full of elasticity. The moment it entered his mouth, it felt as though it was bouncing in his mouth. The aroma was especially strong. Although there wasn't much snake meat, it was still the essence of the snake meat. After it was cooked, it was like a mobile fragrance spraying machine that constantly emitted a rich fragrance. The fragrant aroma greatly increased Bufang's appetite. Therefore, even as he swept his gaze over the spirit wolves, he still scooped the snakeball dragon blood porridge into his mouth. The pack of wolves stared at him, and their noses continuously sniffed the rich fragrance in the air. Droplets of stinky saliva dripped from their mouths, which were filled with sharp teeth and dripped onto the ground. In their eyes, Bufang was their food, and so was the snakeball dragon blood porridge. Why did so many ingredients suddenly appear? I wonder how wolf meat tastes like? Contrary to the wolves' expectations, Bufang's face did not reveal the slightest trace of fear or worry. Instead, it was filled with excitement. The way he looked at the wolves and the way they looked at him was not much different. It was the gaze of a prey looking at its food. Even Song Lang was a little surprised by his gaze. Suddenly, a melodious wolf howl resounded. Then, the gray wolves all raised their heads and howled in the distance. These howls rose and fell like a melodious tune. However, Bufang knew that this was the signal that the wolves were about to launch an attack. It was also the howl that the wolves used to destroy the enemy's will to resist. Bufang listened to the howl and scooped another spoonful of porridge into his mouth. He smacked his lips and clicked his tongue. Roar! The fearless look on Bufang's face enraged the wolves. One of the wolves roared and slammed its paw on the ground. Then, it pounced toward Bufang as fast as the wind. This seemed to be the rhythm of an attack. One after another, the wolves launched their attacks, pouncing toward Bufang. This was an extremely shocking scene. If a timid person saw this scene, he would be so frightened that he would fall on his butt. This group of wolves pounced over in an orderly manner. They did not immediately pounce on Bufang. Instead, they formed a large circle around Bufang, trapping him within. It seemed like they were destroying Bufang's will and nibbling away at him step by step. After finishing the last mouthful of porridge, Bufang put down the bowl and spoon in his hand. His gaze fell on the wolves around him, and his eyes gradually became serious. Green smoke curled up and a dragon's roar resounded. A pitch-black kitchen knife appeared in his hand. With a golden dragon bone kitchen knife in his hand, Bufang was fearless. Wherever the knife pointed, it would become an ingredient. This group of wolves were merely ingredients in his hand. However, just when Bufang was about to show off his skills and harvest the ingredients, a whistling sound burst out from the depths of the great river. That was the sound of arrows piercing through the air. One after another, the arrows tore through the air, bursting with the radiance of true energy. They shot toward the group of wolves and quickly pierced through the body of a wolf, ruthlessly nailing it to the ground. The wolf howled in pain and powerlessly fell to the ground, blood gushing out. The smell of blood seemed to have stimulated the tyrannical mentality of this group of wolves. Their oily green eyes suddenly became scarlet, and the gaze that stared at Bufang became even more ferocious. Roar! This group of wolves couldn't find their target, so they once again turned their murderous intent toward Bufang. They no longer surrounded Bufang and directly pounced toward him. The sound of bowstrings being pulled rang out once again. Another radiant arrow was shot out from the darkness. The person who shot these arrows had excellent archery skills. Every arrow hit a wolf, causing blood to flow on the ground. Bufang suspiciously looked toward the gloomy forest. He seemed to be a little puzzled as to why there would be arrows. Swish! Swish! A series of leaping sounds rang out. Then, 3 figures appeared on the huge branches of a distant tree. These 3 figures were all holding on to bowstrings, and their target was Bufong. Their auras were very powerful, and as they rose and fell, there seemed to be a strange sense of heaviness. These people were all wearing the same long robes, and on their robes there was a pattern of a small tower. The 3 of them, 2 men and 1 woman, stood on the branches of a tree and looked down at Bufong. Their gazes were somewhat strange. This was the first time they saw someone so fearless as to dare to walk alone in the 100,000 mountains. Was this person courting death? Roar! With a bestial roar, a wolf howled and charged toward Bufong, who seemed to be in a daze. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it opened its hideous mouth. This beast is courting death. The eyebrows of the cold-looking man standing on the tree suddenly furrowed. He coldly shouted and pulled the bowstring in his hand. A glowing arrow whizzed out and flew toward the wolf that was pouncing toward Bufong. In an instant, it pierced through the wolf. The wolf was ruthlessly nailed to the ground, and its low howls reverberated in Bufong's ears. Bufong indifferently looked at the wolf, then raised his head and looked at the people standing proudly on the tree. He slightly furrowed his brows. What? Were these people here to steal the ingredients? The other wolves retreated with a rough howl. The forest, which was originally filled with an austere atmosphere, once again became cold and cheerless. A few figures landed on the ground with a swoosh and walked toward Bufong's position. Are you from the village outside the mountains? How dare you come to the 100,000 mountains alone? Is this a place where people like you can come? The serious-looking man frowned and coldly scolded Bufong. The remaining man and woman also looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. Aren't you here to steal the ingredients? Bufong was stunned for a moment. Then he asked in puzzlement, Ingredients? What ingredients? The 3 of them looked at each other in puzzlement. Then they looked at the corpses of the wolves lying on the ground and raised their brows. Are you talking about these wolves? Hee. We are here to save you. The woman, who wore a robe with a small pagoda painted on it, looked at Bufong with a somewhat ridiculous expression. Ingredients? Stealing ingredients with a mortal like you? Let's not talk about their identities. Just based on the fact that this wolf meat tasted so bad, who would be so bored as to steal it from you? Seeing how you were so frightened by the pack of wolves that you couldn't even move, who was the one who was the ingredient? Oh, thank you for your help. Leave these wolves to me. Bufong nodded his head. Since they weren't here to steal his ingredients, then everything was negotiable. With a twirl of the kitchen knife in his hand, it turned into a wisp of green smoke and dissipated. Thereafter, he calmly picked up the corpse of the wolf on the ground and walked toward the bonfire while dragging it along. The woman was furious. How could this guy not know what's good for him? We saved him, didn't we? Senior sister, don't you think that the thing in the wok smells good? One of the 3 people, who looked like a young man, twitched his nose and stared at the snakeball dragon blood kanji that was boiling over the bonfire in the distance. When the woman heard what the young man said, she subconsciously twitched her nose and her eyes slightly widened. Indeed, it smells quite good. Senior sister, let's go and eat. Since we saved him, let's treat it as a token of our gratitude. The young man wiped his saliva and walked toward Bufong with a smile. The woman felt somewhat helpless. Her junior brother was a glutton. The 3 of them sat in front of Bufong and surrounded the bonfire. They seemed very familiar with each other. Bufong looked at the 3 of them with a strange expression. What was the meaning of this? Didn't they say that they wouldn't steal ingredients? Brat, do you know how dangerous the 100,000 mountains is? You should leave at daybreak. This is not a place you can come to, the serious-looking young man said to Bufong. Wah, senior brother, this kanji is really delicious. Before the serious-looking young man could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by the gluttonous young man. The latter furrowed his brows and looked over. He saw the gluttonous young man holding a spoon and eating heartily. As he ate, he exclaimed in surprise, What a scandal! Yi Pang, behave yourself. Don't embarrass the clear sky pagoda. The the serious-looking young man said in displeasure. The young man's expression stiffened, and he awkwardly sat down. The three of them stayed beside Bufong for a while and felt somewhat bored. Suddenly, the serious-looking young man's expression changed. He took out a glowing jade pendant and stood up. The elder has summoned us. Let's hurry over. The serious-looking young man furrowed his brows and looked at Bufong. He said, Brat, leave as soon as possible. Cherish your life. Oomph. The woman coldly snorted and turned around to leave. Are you a chef? This congee tastes really good. Listen to my senior brother and leave early tomorrow morning. Otherwise, if you die, it would be a pity for your cooking skills. The young man laughed and said to Bufong. Without waiting for Bufong's reply, he followed the other two and left. Bufong was speechless as he watched the three of them leave. Then he turned his head around, and the golden dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand once again. With a swing of the knife, he easily peeled off the wolf's skin. That skill. If the three people from before saw it, they would definitely be shocked. That was the skin of a 5th-grade wolf. To be able to peel it off so easily, it wasn't just a matter of cooking skills. His cultivation was definitely extraordinary. Chapter 336. Just as the woman from the clear sky pagoda had thought, the taste of the gray wolf's meat was really terrible, and it wasn't delicious at all. After Bufong completely peeled off the wolf's skin and touched the wolf's meat, he could roughly guess the taste of the wolf's meat. Because the gray wolf's meat was well developed and its entire body was filled with muscle fibers, it was extremely hard. Therefore, the taste was terrible. Even though the meat contained a dense amount of spirit energy, it couldn't change the fact that it was hard to swallow. Naturally, Bufong furrowed his brows when he saw this kind of ingredient. However, it was an ingredient from a 5th-grade spirit beast after all. Wasting it just like that was not in line with Bufong's identity as a chef. Waving his kitchen knife, he cut the wolf's meat into pieces. Then, Bufong used a wooden stick to pierce through the pieces of wolf's meat and roasted them above the bonfire. During the roasting process, Bufong would occasionally use spirit energy to adjust the meat. The boiling snake-ball dragon blood congee in the wok was almost finished, and Bufong didn't continue eating it. He had already tasted it, and the taste was about the same. After cleaning the wok and putting it away, Bufong started to process the wolf's meat with all his attention. Before the stench of blood in the surroundings could disperse, the roars of beasts rang out unknowingly, giving people a feeling of numbness on their skin. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The wolf's meat was quickly cooked. Although the wolf's meat was made up of muscle fibers, it turned golden after being roasted. Drops of oil dripped down from the roasted meat and into the bonfire, causing the flames to burn even more vigorously. Bufong took out seasoning from the system's storage space and continuously sprinkled it on the meat. Although the ingredient wasn't great, Bufong still tried his best to cook the gray wolf's meat into a delicious dish. From the gradually rising fragrance of the meat, one could tell that the wolf's meat, which was supposed to be hard to swallow, was actually bursting out with a tempting aroma that made people swallow their saliva. As the fragrance of the meat filled the air, the spirit beasts, who were originally tempted by the smell of blood, started to riot. Just as the spirit beasts were about to pounce at Bufong, an intense explosion was heard from afar. The sound made the spirit beasts seem to have sensed something. They raised their heads in alarm, turned around, and left. In just a short while, all of them had disappeared. Bufong also looked in the direction of the explosion with a puzzled expression. He grabbed the golden and fragrant wolf meat and stood up. With a wave of his true energy, he swatted down his palm and extinguished the fire. Bufong grabbed the grilled wolf meat and slowly walked toward the location of the explosion. He had come to the 100,000 mountains in search of the fire seed of the 10,000 bestial flames. Could this explosion be related to the fire seed? Bufong thought to himself as he calmly walked toward the location with the fragrant grilled wolf meat in his hand. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flickered, and it nimbly followed behind Bufong. Ha ha! Someone from the clear sky pagoda? A disdainful voice resounded and lingered in the sunken valley. The valley was gloomy and full of vegetation. On top of a towering tree, a gray-haired youth crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at the figures below. These people were all wearing white robes with a small pagoda pattern embroidered on them. Without a doubt, this group of people were the experts of the Clear Sky Pagoda. The 100,000 Mountains was the home ground of the Clear Sky Pagoda. You madman, you actually dared to wantonly kill the disciples of my Clear Sky Pagoda? Obediently surrender. An old man stared coldly at the gray-haired youth and shouted. His eyes were filled with anger. The disciples of the Clear Sky Pagoda around him were also filled with righteous indignation. I'm so scared. The Clear Sky Pagoda is really powerful. It actually dares to be so unreasonable. The gray-haired youth sneered. I was the one who saw the 8th grade lion-head demonic potato first. Your Clear Sky Pagoda's disciples wanted to snatch it from me. Who else can they blame for dying because their skills were inferior? The elder of the Clear Sky Pagoda coldly snorted. His gaze fell on a jade-green plant in the distance. The plant's leaves were lush, and spirit energy circulated around it. Although it didn't seem special, the elder was startled because it was the 8th grade lionhead demonic potato. An 8th grade spirit herb was naturally incomparably valuable. However, this isn't a reason for you to kill the disciples of my Clear Sky Pagoda. The elder took a deep breath and looked at the gray-haired youth. His eyes narrowed, and the disciples of the Clear Sky Pagoda around him raised the longbows in their hands. The bowstrings were taut, and they aimed at the gray-haired youth. The gray-haired youth twisted his neck and cracked a smile. However, the coldness in his eyes became even colder. A small power in the training ground is actually so arrogant. As expected, unruly people are born in barren mountains and unruly rivers. Since you are courting death, then go and die. The gray-haired youth laughed, and the killing intent in his eyes surged. Buzz, a wave of fluctuation exploded. The elder of the Clear Sky Pagoda bellowed angrily. Release. Swoosh. Swoosh. One after another, rays of true energy shot towards the gray-haired man on the tree like a meteor shower. Every single arrow was extremely fast, whistling through the air as it tore through the air. The disciples of the Clear Sky Pagoda were all proficient in archery. With so many arrows raining down, it was almost impossible for the enemy to dodge. Among the disciples of the Clear Sky Pagoda, the strongest were at the 7th grade, and the weakest were at the 5th grade. With so many arrows raining down, even an 8th grade war god would have to think twice before facing them. However, the gray-haired youth only sneered, and the corners of his mouth curled up in disdain. The light in his hand vibrated, and a ball of scarlet flame ignited in his hand. The flame burned fiercely, and with a wave of his hand, it formed a wall of fire in front of the gray-haired youth. The arrows rained down on the wall of fire, causing sparks to fly in all directions. However, they were unable to break through the wall of fire. Is this a heaven and earth obsidian flame? The elder of the Clear Sky Pagoda sucked in a breath of air and frowned. No, it couldn't be a heaven and earth obsidian flame. Although the power of this flame was not bad, it was still inferior to a heaven and earth obsidian flame. Could it be that your goal is also the 10,000 bestial flames of the 100,000 mountains? Possessing such a peculiar flame and possessing such a powerful cultivation, appearing in the 100,000 mountains, was definitely for the 10,000 bestial flames, which was about to erupt. Old man, you are quite observant. It is really a stroke of luck for a treasure like the 10,000 bestial flames to appear in the southern region. I naturally wanted to try my luck, the gray-haired youth said calmly. The elder from the Clear Sky Pagoda still wanted to say something, but his eyes narrowed. That was because he discovered that the wall of fire that filled the sky had suddenly changed. It had actually turned into a roaring bird. It spread its wings and soared over, bringing with it a terrifying might. Several disciples of the Clear Sky Pagoda, who bore the brunt of the attack, were directly burned to ashes by the blazing bird's flames. The gray-haired youth was an 8th grade war god. With the addition of the peculiar flame, his battle prowess was incomparably valiant. Even the elder of the Clear Sky Pagoda was defeated and spat out blood. Several disciples of the Clear Sky Pagoda were burned to death in this battle. In the end, they relied on the formation formed by the crowd to defend against the gray-haired youth's attack. However, it was obvious that the gray-haired youth didn't use his full strength. He only urged the flames to slow down the group of Clear Sky Pagoda warriors. His gaze was fixed on the lion-head demonic potato. He landed on the ground and slowly walked toward the swaying dark green spirit herb. A rich fragrance filled the air, and he couldn't help but take in a deep breath. The reason why the lion-head demonic potato was called the lion-head demonic potato was because there was a demonic potato with the head of a lion growing under its dark green leaves. The youth grabbed the leaf and exerted his strength to pull it out. Along with a roar of a lion, a surging spirit energy filled the air. Soon after, the entire area seemed to be illuminated. Below the leaf, a lifelike golden lion's head appeared. The lion opened its mouth and roared. The youth looked at the lion-head demonic potato with satisfaction and excitement appeared on his face. This lion-head demonic potato is an extremely delicious ingredient. It seems like I'm in luck this time. The gray-haired youth grinned and moved his nose to the lion's head. His face was filled with enjoyment as he sniffed. All of a sudden, his eyes focused and he looked into the distance. He coldly shouted, "Who's there? Come out." The people of the Clear Sky Pagoda, who were bitterly resisting the mysterious blazing bird of the gray-haired youth, were overjoyed when they heard the shout of the gray-haired youth. Could it be that the reinforcements of the Clear Sky Pagoda had arrived? They excitedly walked toward the location where the rustling sound came from. Soon after, the joy in their eyes disappeared. This was because the person who appeared in front of them wasn't the reinforcements of the Clear Sky Pagoda. Instead, it was an unfamiliar and skinny figure. It was a youth who was holding a skewer of golden roasted meat. Chapter 337. 2 crescent moons hung high in the pitch-black night sky. Countless stars twinkled in the night sky. From time to time, a meteor streaked across the sky, like a pebble falling into a lake, creating ripples. The Western Mystery City, which stood quietly on the plains, exuded the ancientness and dignity of an ancient city. Outside the Western Mystery City, there were 2 figures wrapped in pitch-black long robes slowly approaching. Their strides seemed as though they were gliding. Every step they took would propel their bodies forward a great distance. Swoosh! A whistling wind blew past, blowing off the hat of one of them, revealing an ice-cold mask. "Master, the Western Mystery City is not far away. Should we go in?" The High Priestess asked respectfully as she looked at the figure beside her, whose aura could not be sensed. "Our goal is to obtain the primer that can refine the hundreds of thousands of spiritual essences in the departed soul orb. Why should we enter the city? The spiritual essences in the departed soul orb are already sufficient. We don't need to slaughter the entire city to increase the number of spiritual essences," the figure said in a hoarse voice. The High Priestess immediately nodded her head. The 2 of them merely glanced at the Western Mystery City before bypassing the ancient city and heading toward the stretch of mountains and rivers behind the Western Mystery City. That was their destination, the 100,000 mountains. "Why are you here? Why aren't you escaping?" Yipang's forehead was drenched in sweat. He was trying his best to activate the true energy in his body to resist the blazing ardent bird that was roaring in the air. Like the others, he thought that reinforcements had appeared. He did not expect that it would be the chef they met earlier. Yipang actually thought highly of Bufong, or rather, he thought highly of Bufong's culinary skills. At least, the red porridge in the pot had completely conquered him. Before he left, he had advised Bufong to leave the 100,000 mountains and not lose his life in vain. However, he did not expect that Bufong would actually come here. Did he not see that there was a great battle going on? Did he not see that it was extremely dangerous here? Yi Pang could sense that the true energy fluctuations from Bu Fang's body were not intense. In his opinion, Bu Fang was only a 4th-grade battle spirit, or at most a 5th-grade battle king. In the 100,000 Mountains, this kind of cultivation was considered nothing. Bu Fang grabbed the golden roasted wolf meat. The roasted meat was steaming, the oil was overflowing, and the aroma filled the air. Bu Fang took a bite of the wolf meat as he walked. The taste was not bad, but the texture of the meat was really bad. Even after Bu Fang's special treatment, it still couldn't make the wolf meat softer. After all, this was the attribute of the ingredient. It was a thankless task for Bu Fang to change it. After taking 1 or 2 bites, Bu Fang felt a little tasteless. "Hey, don't go any further," Yi Pang shouted with difficulty. Bu Fang finally heard Yi Pang shout. He turned his head to look at Yi Pang, who was bitterly resisting the ardent bird, and a trace of surprise appeared on his face. "What a coincidence! You're here too," Bu Fang said. "Coincidence? Coincidence your head. Can't you see the current situation and danger?" Actually, Bu Fang didn't want to come out. However, when he saw the lion-head demonic potato, he couldn't help but walk out. The gray-haired youth stared at Bu Fang, and it seemed as if he was surprised by Bu Fang's identity. When he saw the chubby Shao by behind Bu Fang, he raised his eyebrows and asked, "A member of the puppet sect?" Bu Fang naturally didn't know what the puppet sect was, so he didn't reply to him. Instead, he stared at the lion-head demonic potato with a strange gaze. "No, you're not a member of the puppet sect, and this isn't the puppet sect's bronze corpse puppet. What is this thing that's as fat as a ball?" The gray-haired youth's attention wasn't on Bu Fang. Instead, it was on Xiao Bai, who was behind Bu Fang. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flickered as it swept over the gray-haired youth. The gray-haired youth's pupils contracted. He actually felt his heart palpitate from the puppet. Bu Fang continued to stride forward. The gray-haired youth furrowed his brows and coldly shouted, "Get lost!" This shout caused Bu Fang's footsteps to stop. He indifferently glanced at the gray-haired youth before continuing forward. "You're courting death." The gray-haired youth sneered inwardly. Since Bu Fang wasn't a member of the puppet sect, he wouldn't mind killing him. He casually waved his hand, and the blazing ardent bird, which had been suppressing the clear sky pagoda's expert, let out a cry. It spread its wings and flew toward Bu Fang. It wanted to burn Bu Fang into ashes. Xiao Bai's eyes instantly turned purple. Just as he was about to attack, he was stopped by Bu Fang. Bu Fang stared at the roaring, blazing ardent bird, and he became slightly excited. A green smoke curled up from his hand, and the black turtle constellation Walk floated in front of him. The black turtle constellation Walk rotated slightly and floated above Bu Fang's head under his will. The roaring, blazing ardent bird instantly covered Bu Fang. Bang! Monstrous flames burned, and heat waves surged. The pupils of the clear sky pagoda's experts shrank, and they felt a chill in their hearts. Even though the gray-haired youth's flame wasn't a heaven and earth flame, its might was still extremely terrifying. They had never heard of such a person in the southern region. "That guy is dead for sure." The woman from the clear sky pagoda looked at Bu Fang's position. The surging flames illuminated her face, turning it red. "What a pity." Yi Pang lightly sighed. He really admired Bu Fang's culinary skills, but it was a pity that such an outstanding chef would die here. The other people from the Clear Sky Pagoda didn't think too much about it. To them, Bu Fang was dispensable. What they needed to worry about now was how to escape from the gray-haired youth's hands. Even though the gray-haired youth only had a cultivation of 8th grade, with the addition of his peculiar flames, his battle prowess was close to 9th grade. They weren't a match for him. Now that such an expert had appeared in the 100,000 Mountains, they had to return to the Clear Sky Pagoda to inform the other experts there. "I'll hold him back. You all quickly escape. You must return alive." The eyes of the Clear Sky Pagoda's elder flickered with determination. Then, he stood up and stood in front of the disciples. The disciples' faces were filled with grief. However, they couldn't dissuade the elder, so they could only turn around and leave. "Trying to leave? After acting tough in front of me, Duan Yin, you still want to leave?" The gray-haired youth sneered and casually waved his hand. In an instant, the flames' momentum changed. They suddenly soared into the sky and transformed into a huge, flaming palm. The raging flaming palm swatted toward Yi Peng and the others. However, when all the flames left Bu Fang's position, Duan Yun was stunned. That was because the slender figure was still calmly standing there. "Why didn't you get burned to ashes by my alchemic flames?" Duan Yun cried out in disbelief. He was extremely shocked. He was well aware of his own abilities. Even though his alchemic flames couldn't compare to the heaven and earth obsidian flames, when he activated them, even an 8th grade war god would be incinerated to death, let alone Bu Fang, whose aura wasn't that strong. It wasn't just Duan Yun. The people from the Clear Sky Pagoda were also so shocked that their jaws almost dropped to the ground. This was especially true for Yi Peng and the woman. They originally thought that Bu Fang would have already been burned to ashes by the flames. However, reality always exceeded their expectations. "He's actually fine." Yi Peng's eyes widened. Bu Fang calmly stood at his original position. He furrowed his brows and a trace of disappointment flashed in his eyes. The pitch-black turtle constellation Wok hovered above his head. Previously, Duan Yun's alchemic flames had all collided with the black turtle constellation Wok. Bu Fang originally wanted to test if the scarlet flames could activate the black turtle constellation Wok. However, after burning it for a while, the temperature of the black turtle constellation Wok didn't even change. It was obvious that it was just as the system had said. In order to activate the black turtle constellation Wok, one must use the heaven and earth obsidian flames. "You can actually block my alchemic flames?" "It seems like I, Duan Yun, have misjudged you. You really hid your abilities well." Duan Yun's expression turned cold. Then, he pinched the talisman, and the flaming palm that was originally aimed at the Clear Sky Pagoda disciple turned toward Bu Fang. Bu Fang didn't have a good impression of this Duan Yun. He had only walked out from the thicket and glanced at the lion-head demonic potato. Yet this Duan Yun wanted to kill him. Bu Fang was speechless. Because he was speechless, he didn't feel anything. Bang! The flaming palm that blotted out the sky came crashing down. The entire ground seemed to have been set ablaze by raging flames. This time, he was definitely going to die, Duan Yun exhaled. The might of this palm was much stronger than the blazing ardent bird he had casually activated. He didn't believe that Bu Fang could survive this attack. Just the scorching temperature of the alchemic flames alone wasn't something an ordinary person could withstand. The increasingly powerful flames caused the mouths of the Clear Sky Pagoda disciples to twitch. If that palm had been aimed at them, they would have already been reduced to ashes. This time, I'm definitely going to die, right? Yi Peng looked at the burning ground with uncertainty. However, his pupils quickly constricted. This was because a figure slowly surged out from within the flames. Duan Yun's muscles tensed up. He stared at the flames. The flames swelled up and burned fiercely. With a whoosh, the flames were suddenly torn apart. A giant black wok slowly flew out from within the flames and smashed toward Duan Yun. What the hell was this wok? Duan Yun was stunned. He subconsciously wanted to slap away the black wok that was an eyesore. Just as his palm collided with the black wok, an expressionless face appeared behind it. Bu Fang grabbed the black wok and casually smashed it toward Duan Yun. Chapter 338. Duan Yun had never placed Bu Fang in his eyes. In his eyes, if one wasn't a supreme being, then there was no need to pay any attention to him. In this mere training ground, Duan Yun was confident that he would be invincible among his peers. He could easily kill anyone below the supreme being level. His confidence came from his background and his own strength and trump cards. However, the black wok in front of him had completely smashed his confidence, causing him to be at a loss. It was just a wok. He felt that he could smash it into pieces with a single slap. However, reality was always so cruel. Duan Yun slammed his palm against the black wok, but to his surprise, the black wok did not budge at all. The huge rebounding force caused his palm to go numb, but the black walk remained unscathed. He was dumbfounded. A huge force pressed down on his arm, causing the black walk to smash down on his head. Thump! With a melodious thud, Duan Yun's head was smashed. His entire body was thrown into disarray. It was as if countless stars were floating in front of him. His ears buzzed incessantly. His vision became blurry and his ears buzzed. He was completely dumbfounded. Bufang single-handedly grabbed the black turtle constellation walk and moved closer to Duan Yun. After all, Duan Yun's cultivation was extremely strong. Although the black turtle constellation walk made him dizzy, he quickly recovered. This fellow was even stronger than the blood guard at the peak of the 8th grade. His vision was blurry. Duan Yun finally saw the scene in front of him clearly. An expressionless face fell into his eyes. When he came back to his senses, his pupils shrank. He didn't faint. Let's do it again. Bufang muttered. Because they were very close, Bufang's mutterings fell into Duan Yun's ears. The corners of Duan Yun's mouth twitched. He opened his mouth to say something, but Bufang couldn't be bothered with him. He grabbed the black turtle constellation walk. With a bang, Duan Yun was knocked unconscious again. Even though he was an 8th grade war god, he was still knocked unconscious by a walk. Duan Yun was definitely crying in his heart. Bufang held the black turtle constellation walk in one hand and the unconscious Duan Yun in the other. The raging flames also gradually dissipated as Duan Yun fainted. Rip! With a loud explosion, the sonic boom of a bowstring tearing came from the depths of the forest in the distance. An arrow shining with the light of true chi shot toward Bufang's head at the speed of shooting star. The might of this arrow was extremely terrifying. It was much stronger than the clear sky pagoda's disciples below. Bufang felt a scorching hot gust of wind cutting at him, as if it wanted to cut his skin. He instinctively placed the black turtle constellation walk in front of him. Ding! With a crisp sound, the arrow smashed into the black turtle constellation walk. Then, a burst of sparks flew out and fell into the distance. Green smoke curled around Bufang's hand. Then, the black turtle constellation walk disappeared. Bufang exhaled and shook his slightly numb palm. He grabbed the unconscious Duan Yun and the lion head demonic potato in his hand and turned around to leave. Xiao Bai raised his mechanical arm and scratched his round head. The purple glow in his mechanical eyes faded and turned into a rosy red. Looking at Bufang's back as he left, the others didn't have the guts to step forward and say anything. He knocked out an 8th grade war god who had crushed so many of their clear sky pagoda's experts with just 2 walk strikes. Who was this fellow who was swinging a walk around? Why was he so terrifying? Yi Peng's face was filled with excitement. It turned out that Bufang was actually an unfathomable expert. He actually misjudged him. The woman and the stern-faced man were embarrassed. They recalled the advice they gave to Bufang and suddenly felt that it was ridiculous. Initially, they thought that they had saved Bufang from the wolves. However, they didn't expect that even without them, the pack of wolves would have become Bufang's delicacies. They had thought too highly of themselves and had even put on a show in front of such a powerhouse. How embarrassing. Fortunately, Bufang didn't pay attention to them. Otherwise, they really wouldn't know how to face Bufang. Swoosh! Several figures dashed out from the dense forest, and at the very front was a rather beautiful young girl. Sister! Yi Peng's eyes lit up when he saw the beautiful figure. He waved his arm at the young lady and shouted. Yi Xiling felt a chill in her heart when she saw the miserable appearance of the crowd and the residual heat in the air. Without a doubt, her reinforcements came a little too late. However, she was also somewhat puzzled in her heart. Before she rushed over, she saw a figure standing in front of Yi Peng. That figure seemed somewhat familiar to her, but when she rushed over, that figure had already disappeared. Why do I feel that that figure is somewhat familiar? Yi Xiling furrowed her pretty brows and thought carefully. However, after thinking for a long time, she still couldn't figure it out. After all, it was just a glimpse. She didn't expect that she would stop thinking about it. She heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that many experts from the Clear Sky Pagoda were still alive. Although many disciples had fallen, there were still many survivors. You brat, Be obedient and go back. This time, you almost scared me to death." Although Yi Xiling was silly, she still acted like an elder sister in front of Yi Peng and scolded him with dissatisfaction. She didn't act like a shadow following behind an Yin at all. Yi Peng grinned and then excitedly recounted the battle to Yi Xiling. He vividly described Bu Feng's unfathomable appearance. Duan Yin felt a jolt and a pain in his head that felt like it was about to explode. He sucked in a breath of cold air and slowly opened his eyes. Then he saw a pitch-black night sky that was constantly moving backward. In the distance, the first glimmer of dawn could already be seen. Thump, thump, thump. Duan Yin felt as if his head was constantly moving up and down. It was rubbing against the ground, and he felt a burning pain. When he woke up, his eyes widened. Then he discovered that he was being dragged on the ground by someone by his feet. This position was very awkward. Duan Yin felt an unprecedented humiliation, so he began to struggle. "Who are you? Let me go. Do you know who I am? You unruly commoner of the training ground." Bu Feng grabbed Duan Yin's leg and suddenly realized that Duan Yin, who was behind him, seemed to have woken up and was chattering nonstop. Bu Feng furrowed his brows and turned his head to look at the gray-haired man who was glaring at him. The corners of his mouth twitched. Green smoke curled around his hand, and the heavy black turtle constellation Wok appeared once more. Duan Yin looked at the black Wok in fear and then at the expressionless Bu Feng. Then he realized that the black Wok was growing larger in his eyes. Dong! He was knocked unconscious again. However, with his constitution, he quickly regained consciousness. Bu Feng furrowed his brows and knocked him again. When he woke up for the third time, Duan Yin stopped struggling and lay lifelessly on the ground, allowing Bu Feng to drag him along. Since Duan Yin did not grumble, Bu Feng was too lazy to knock him out. He quickly walked out of the valley and found a good location before putting Duan Yin down. The sky was getting brighter and brighter. Soon, sunlight shone down from the outside and passed through the gaps between the leaves. It was reflected on the ground as though it was covered with crushed gold. Duan Yin finally felt the pressure from the black Wok disappear. He struggled to get up from the ground and rubbed his swollen head. He looked at the figure in the distance with grief and indignation. Looking at the figure, Duan Yin became even more indignant. He discovered that the lion-head demonic potato he snatched from the Clear Sky Pagoda experts had fallen into the hands of the Wok demon. The Wok demon examined the lion-head demonic potato for a while before turning his head to look at Duan Yin expressionlessly. His bright eyes gave Duan Yin a bad premonition. "Do you want to taste the delicacies of the mortal world?" the demon asked calmly. Duan Yin was taken aback. Don't be afraid. I just want to borrow your fire to roast the sweet potato." "Oh no, the demonic potato." Chapter 339. Borrow a fire to roast a sweet potato? Are you sure you're not messing with me? My fire is an alchemic fire, a precious flame used to refine elixirs. You're telling me to use it to roast a sweet potato? Duan Yin stared at Bu Feng with widened eyes. It was as if 10,000 black puppies were galloping through his heart. "Don't be afraid, I won't cheat you. I'll borrow your fire, and I'll give you half of the sweet potato after I'm done roasting it." Bu Feng realized that Duan Yin was glaring at him with a strange expression on his face. He pondered for a moment before coming to a sudden realization. Giving him half of the sweet potato, that's not the main point. Duan Yin was dumbfounded and wanted to vomit blood. What was this fellow thinking when he smashed someone with a wok? Did he look like a person who would sell his dignity for a sweet potato? Alchemic fire was an alchemist's treasure. It was equivalent to an alchemist's face. How could he be so shameless for a mere half of sweet potato? Alchemic fire is used to refine elixirs, not to roast sweet potatoes. I will never lend my alchemic fire to you. Duan Yin clenched his teeth and snorted. He turned his head away as if he would rather die than comply. Duan Yin's attitude slightly surprised Bu Feng. He didn't expect this fellow to have such a backbone. Bu Feng tossed the lion-head demonic potato in his hand. A fragrant aroma wafted from the demonic potato, and Bu Feng couldn't wait to eat it. Duan Yin looked at the demonic potato in Bu Fong's hand and seemed to have thought of something. He turned his head to look at Bu Fong in disbelief. The sweet potato you're talking about. Don't tell me you're talking about this lion head demonic potato? That's right. Don't stand on ceremony. I'll really share half of it with you, Bu Fong earnestly said. Puff. Duan Yin felt like vomiting blood in his heart. This was a freaking 8th grade elixir. What a precious ingredient it was. It could replenish one's essence, heal injuries, increase one's true energy, and refine it into an elixir that could strengthen one's foundation. It was an exceptional treasure. This fellow in front of him was actually planning to roast it. Was this even something that could be roasted? How could a roasted demonic potato bring out the full potential of its medicinal properties? What a waste. How could you use the demonic potato to roast? Duan Yun's lips were trembling in anger. Gotcha. Bu Fong looked at Duan Yun in astonishment. He gently broke off one of the lion head demonic potato's whiskers, and a dense essence qi immediately seeped out from the crack. Bu Fong's eyes lit up, and he took a deep breath in enjoyment. The flesh inside the devil potato was actually a sparkling orange color. It was very pleasing to the eye. What's wrong? Don't you like roasted sweet potatoes? It doesn't matter. If the sweet potato is cooked with rice, the taste is also very good. But you still have to lend me your fire, Bu Fong said. The main reason why Bu Fong had knocked Duan Yun unconscious and taken him away was because of his alchemic fire. This was the first time that Bu Fong had seen such a strange flame. Its temperature was extremely high, and it seemed to have a mind of its own. A dish cooked with this kind of flame would definitely taste extraordinary. Who's talking to you about food? Duan Yin was furious. Is this guy's brain only filled with food? This devil potato could be used to refine elixirs. He might even be able to refine an 8th grade elixir. Do you want to lend me your fire? No way. This concerns the dignity of an alchemist. I can't lend you my alchemic fire, Duan Yun stubbornly said. Bu Fong stood up and looked down at Duan Yun, who was lying on the ground, expressionlessly. He slowly raised his hand. Duan Yun narrowed his eyes. What? Do you want to fight? Buzz, a wave of green smoke curled up, and a simple, pitch-black kitchen knife appeared in Bu Fong's hand. Kitchen knife? What was this guy trying to do? If you have something to say, then say it. Why did you take out a kitchen knife? Duan Yin felt all the pores on his body shrink. The sharp kitchen knife flickered under the sunlight. Duan Yin really wanted to cry. Why did he have to encounter such a weirdo? Was he going to become the first noble alchemist to die in the hands of Chef's kitchen knife? Oh, sorry, I took the wrong one. Looking at the dragon bone kitchen knife in his hand, Bu Fong's expression stiffened. He awkwardly apologized, and then with a bang, the kitchen knife turned into green smoke and dissipated. There was another buzzing sound, and as the smoke curled up, a huge black wok appeared in Bu Fong's hand. Bu Fong single-handedly grabbed it and suspended it above Duan Yun's head. Duan Yun looked at the wok in despair. You might as well have used a kitchen knife. The fire must be stable. Don't be impatient. Take it slowly. Bu Fong's calm voice resounded through the forest. In a corner of the forest, a blazing flame appeared. Duan Yun, with his head swollen, was sitting in front of a huge pit. A scarlet flame was burning within the pit. This flame belonged to Duan Yun's alchemic fire. Bu Fong, on the other hand, had his arm around Duan Yun's shoulder. His gaze was fixed on the lion head demonic potato in the pit. As the alchemic fire burned, the lion head demonic potato's spirit essence spewed out at a faster rate. It surged into the flame, causing it to burn even more vigorously. Is the lion head demonic potato roasted like this edible? You're wasting a precious medicinal ingredient. In our sect, if you're caught, you'll be drowned in a pig's cage. Duan Yin glanced at the excited Bu Fong beside him and said in a weak voice. His gray hair seemed to have shriveled up on his head like a sickly person. The lion head demonic potato is a very good ingredient. Why can't it be eaten? Not only is it edible, but it's also a rare delicacy. Don't retract the fire. Continue to maintain its intensity, Bu Fong said earnestly. He walked to the edge of the pit. The alchemic fire's temperature was extremely high. Moreover, it possessed spirituality. It was not something an ordinary fire could compare to. If this kind of flame could be used for cooking, the benefits it would bring to a chef would be indescribable. Bu Fong extended his slender palm and covered the top of the pit. His will spread out, and a misty, true energy coiled around the alchemic fire like a small snake. It drilled into the pit through the alchemic fire. Roar! An angry lion's roar seemed to come from within the pit. The lion-head demonic potato was actually shaking violently. The fur on the lion's head was standing on end. The outline of the lion-head demonic potato could be faintly seen in the flames. The golden color on its surface had actually dimmed due to the roasting of the flames. Look, if I continue roasting it, the essence of the lion-head demonic potato will be completely lost, Duan Yun said with a pained expression. Don't say anything. Continue to spit fire, Bu Fong said without turning his head. Duan Yun felt extremely sullen. He was an alchemist, not a professional flamethrower. Looking at the pitch-black and heavy wok beside Bu Fong, Duan Yun spat out 2 puffs of white smoke from his nostrils. He continued to control the alchemic fire. Bu Fong's true energy coiled around the alchemic fire. It actually separated the alchemic fire and coiled around the lion-head demonic potato like silk threads. This was the true energy cooking that Bu Fong was proficient in. He used his true energy to permeate the ingredients bit by bit, causing the taste and texture of the ingredients to appear to be excellent. However, this was an extremely difficult technique. It required an extremely high level of true energy control and a powerful soul force. Duan Yin was slightly surprised at this moment. This was because he could sense every single thread of true energy from Bu Fong within his alchemic fire. To be able to control true energy to such an extent, just how terrifying was the strength of his soul force. His true energy control was simply too heaven-defying. Roar! Another lion's roar resounded. The lion-head demonic potato within the pit of fire seemed as though it was trying to break free from the restraints of the alchemic fire. Bu Fong's true energy threads coiled around the lion-head demonic potato, preventing it from moving. Increase the intensity of the flames. Incinerate! Bu Fong shouted. Duan Yun subconsciously increased the intensity of the flames. With a loud rumble, the entire pit of fire exploded. Black smoke billowed as thick smoke filled the air. Cough, cough. Duan Yun's face seemed to have been scorched by the flames. The smoke that filled the air caused him to cough incessantly. All of a sudden, his gaze froze. This was because a figure slowly walked out of the pitch-black flames. Bu Fong's body was completely spotless, and he was extremely calm. True energy enveloped his palm, and he held a pitch-black sphere that resembled charcoal. From its appearance, it was obvious that this sphere was the lion-head demonic potato that was glowing with golden light and overflowing with spiritual essence. Look, I already told you not to roast it. Now, it's roasted into charcoal. What a pity for this lion-head demonic potato. What a pity for this 8th-grade spirit herb. Duan Yun's heart ached. Such a heavenly treasure was actually wasted by this idiotic chef. However, Bu Fong was still very calm. He raised a slender finger, placed it by his lips, and softly made a shushing sound. Don't speak. Listen. Duan Yin was taken aback. He watched as Bu Fong flicked the pitch-black round charcoal with his finger. A sizzling sound rang out from the round charcoal, and the black charcoal peeled off. A lion's roar resounded from the charcoal, and a resplendent golden radiance shone from it. Chapter 340. The golden light that emerged from the pitch-black round charcoal was even more dazzling than the usual golden light. It was especially eye-catching and attracted everyone's attention. It was as if a flower bud that had been brewing for a long time had blossomed in an instant. The pitch-black charcoal layer was actually peeling off at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the golden light became even more intense. Steam accompanied the golden light as it surged into the air. It was hazy, as if it was a treasure from fairyland. A rich fragrance surged into the air, making it impossible for anyone to resist. After being roasted, the lion-head demonic potato had an indescribable aroma. There was a hint of scorching smell within the aroma, but it was especially rich. Beneath the peeling charcoal layer was the orange-red flesh of the demonic potato. The flesh of the demonic potato was like a work of art meticulously sculpted by the heavens. It was exquisite and translucent, just like the most precious amber. Dense steam permeated the air around the amber-like flesh, making it even more tempting and appetizing. "Isn't it beautiful?" Bufong said in satisfaction as he held the lion-head demonic potato in one hand. The sweet aroma of the demonic potato caused Bufong's expression to soften. Duan Yun blankly stared at the steaming demonic potato as his nose twitched. The fragrance seemed to possess some sort of magical power. He couldn't help but take in deep breaths in an attempt to inhale the fragrance that permeated the air. After hearing Bufong's question, Duan Yun blankly nodded his head. He never imagined that the lion-head demonic potato could actually become so beautiful. The lion-head demonic potato was a precious 8th-grade spirit herb. Most people would use it to refine elixirs after obtaining it. No one would choose to cook it. Only the freak in front of him would make such a choice. In any case, even though Duan Yun disapproved of the way Bufong used the lion-head demonic potato to cook, the aroma of the cooked lion-head demonic potato was truly enticing. Give it a taste, it'll taste even better. A wisp of green smoke curled around Bufong's hand as the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. With a flash of a knife, the translucent half of the amber-like lion-head demonic potato was cut off. Bufong caught it with the kitchen knife and handed it to Duan Yun. It could really be eaten? Duan Yun swallowed a mouthful of saliva, glanced at Bufong, and took a deep breath. It would be a waste not to eat it. Duan Yun covered his hand with true energy and grabbed the demonic potato meat. The steaming hot demonic potato meat was extremely hot. Although his palm was covered with true energy, it was still scalding and made him scream in pain. His whole body became spirited. He carefully grabbed the lion-head demonic potato with both hands and gently blew on it, causing the heat on the demonic potato to dissipate. Bufong ignored Duan Yun and turned his attention to the lion-head demonic potato in his hand. Roasting a sweet potato was actually a way of cooking during one's leisure time. One would dig a hole in the ground, place a few stones into the hole, then bury the sweet potato. Flammable materials, such as hay, would be placed in the hole, and the heat would be used to roast the sweet potato. This was a method that Bufong remembered from his previous life. Of course, there were many other methods. For example, one could prepare a charcoal stove and roast the sweet potato in it. This way, the moisture on the surface of the sweet potato would disappear, and after peeling off the dry skin, one would be able to see the sweet and tender sweet potato meat inside. The taste was extremely delicious. After peeling off the carbon layer, Bufong sucked in a deep breath, blew on it, and took a bite without the slightest scruple. The scalding hot demonic potato meat almost scalded his teeth. Only after taking a bite and exhaling in his mouth did he realize the unique fragrance. The sweetness enveloped his taste buds and tickled his nerves, causing his eyes to flicker in an instant. The texture of the demonic potato meat was extremely good. The essence energy within was basically preserved, and the spirit energy was especially rich. The small lion-head demonic potato contained a spirit energy that was like a bomb that was about to explode. Most importantly, Bufong sensed something from the roasted demonic potato that he had never tasted before in his previous dishes. It was an indescribable and indescribable feeling. It was like an epiphany, a mysterious state. Bufong concluded that it was spirituality. Although the roasted demonic potato meat was simple, compared to Bufong's previous dishes, it had a spirituality. Although there wasn't a lot of it, and he wouldn't be able to sense it if he didn't pay close attention. His soul force had become more and more sensitive as his cultivation base increased. The appearance of spirituality in a dish made Bufong feel as though he had discovered something new. As he became an intermediate chef, Bu Fang's culinary skills seemed to have reached a bottleneck. Although he would improve every time, the improvement wasn't much and was even getting smaller and smaller. Bu Fang wanted to become the god of cooking who stood at the top of the food chain in this fantasy world. The smaller the improvement, the further he progressed, the further away he would be from his goal. Of course, in his heart, he knew that it was naturally easy to improve at the beginning. However, the higher his level, the higher his vision, and the higher his culinary skills, the more difficult it would be to improve. Perhaps every improvement required a deep foundation. As Bu Fang ate the roasted demonic potato, he fell into deep thought for a moment. Munch, 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 munch. A rhythmic munching sound jolted Bu Fang out of his thoughts. A gaze that made Bu Fang feel a chill was staring at him, causing Bu Fang to raise his eyebrows in surprise. Following the gaze, he saw Duan Yun, who had stood up at some point and was staring at the demonic potato meat in his hand with glowing eyes. What was going on? Bu Fang was dumbfounded. Duan Yun's mouth kept munching and finally, with a gulp, he swallowed the demonic potato meat in his mouth. His whole body was gasping for air. Duan Yun felt as though he had been baptized. This was the first time he had tasted such a delicious dish. The feeling it gave him was as though he had just eaten an 8th-grade elixir. How inconceivable was this? After being roasted, not only did the essence within the demonic potato remain intact, it was even more well-preserved. The moment it entered his mouth, the spirit energy and essence energy within it seemed as though they were about to explode. It made him feel as though he was surfing in the ocean. That comfortable feeling made Duan Yun addicted. How could it be so delicious? Duan Yun howled his heart. Delicious, this was the true delicacy. It turned out that roasted sweet potatoes with alchemic fire tasted so good. Duan Yun was extremely excited. He was even considering whether he should change his occupation and use alchemic fire to roast sweet potatoes. However, this was just a thought. If his sect found out that he used alchemic fire to roast sweet potatoes, it wouldn't just be a matter of being drowned in a pig's cage. Facing Duan Yun's greedy gaze, Bu Fang expressionlessly and leisurely stuffed the remaining half of the lion head demonic potato into his mouth. Munch, munch. A rhythmic chewing sound rang out, causing Duan Yun to feel as though his body was being hollowed out. After forcefully swallowing the demonic potato, Bu Fang let out a satisfied burp. The burp was accompanied by a rich spirit energy and essence energy that filled the air. Suddenly, Bu Fang's eyes widened and he patted his chest. With a wave of his hand, he took out a wine pot from the system's dimensional storage. After gulping down a mouthful of wine, Bu Fang let out a satisfied breath. The taste of the frost blaze, path understanding brew paired with the roasted sweet potato was indeed not bad. A rich wine fragrance filled the air. Duan Yun's eyeballs nearly popped out of their sockets. This wine fragrance was simply 2F* king fragrant. Bu Fang gulped down another mouthful and smacked his lips in satisfaction. Then he saw the dumbfounded Duan Yun not far from him. Want a cup? Bu Fang raised the frost blaze path understanding brew in his hand. Really? Can I? Duan Yun's eyes lit up and he asked in embarrassment. However, his movements were not slow. In just a few moments, he had arrived in front of Bu Fang. Of course not. With a wave of his hand, Bu Fang stored the frost blaze, a path understanding brew, into the system's dimensional storage. This wine is very expensive. Duan Yun felt extremely awkward. What happened to the trust between people? What happened to sharing it? Weren't we friends? After tasting the lion head demonic potato roasted with alchemic fire, Bu Fang was even more interested in the effects of these peculiar flames. His heart was burning with passion. With these flames, his culinary skills would definitely improve once again. Cooking with alchemic fire could allow the roasted demonic potato to possess a trace of spirituality. What if he used the heaven and earth obsidian flame or the 10,000 bestial flames to cook it? Bu Fang did not dare to imagine it. He came to the 100,000 mountains in search of the 10,000 bestial flames to activate the Black Turtle Constellation Walk. Now, He could not wait to obtain the 10,000 bestial flames. This was because it would determine whether his culinary skills could achieve greater breakthroughs. Duanyan looked at Bufang's departing figure and licked his lips. His eyes lit up as he eagerly rushed over to Bufang. Chapter 341. The 100,000 Mountains, the Clear Sky Pagoda. A towering, unadorned iron pagoda stood amidst the towering forest. Around the iron tower, there were houses of various sizes. These houses were endless, forming a small city around the iron tower. Within this small city, disciples of the Clear Sky Pagoda dressed in white robes embroidered with the image of a black iron pagoda could be seen. The city gate opened with a rumble, and a group of people supported each other as they returned to the small city. A screech resounded in the sky. The intense sun bird spread its wings and landed in the city, bringing with it a monstrous heat wave. A chubby old man descended from the back of the intense sunbird. This person was the supreme being expert of the Clear Sky Pagoda, Yi Yanqing. Is someone injured again? Yi Yanqing frowned as he looked at the heavily injured elder. The 100,000 Mountains had not been peaceful recently, because it was time for the 10,000 bestial flames to erupt again. In the past, the 10,000 bestial flames had been suppressed every time it erupted. However, as the number of times it was suppressed increased, the 10,000 bestial flames became more and more terrifying. This time, the 10,000 bestial flames would be completely released. It was obvious that many experts had come to the 100,000 Mountains for the 10,000 bestial flames. After all, it was a heaven and earth obsidian flame. How could it not be coveted? Grandpa, Yi Xiling carried a longbow on her back and dragged Yi Peng by the ear as she walked out of the crowd. Yi Yanqing heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Yi Xiling and Yi Peng were safe and sound. You two troublemakers. Don't you know that the 100,000 Mountains have not been peaceful recently? Stay in the Clear Sky Pagoda and don't go out. Yi Yanqing lectured them with a stern face. Yi Xiling pouted, while Yi Peng drooped his head and remained silent. Grandpa, I met a senior when I went out this time. That senior's culinary skills are really amazing. Yi Peng waited until Yi Yanqing's anger had subsided before he moved closer to him. A chef? There are many chefs out there. What's there to be surprised about? Yi Yanqing was someone who had witnessed Owner Boo's culinary skills. The dragon liver popsicle was still on his mind. Many drakes in the 100,000 Mountains were killed by him, which infuriated the supreme beast. It chased him and beat him until he crossed half of the 100,000 Mountains. Therefore, when he heard Yi Peng call him a chef, he did not think much of it. No matter how good his cooking was, could it be better than Owner Boo's? Yi Peng was a little unconvinced. He recounted his earlier encounter, focusing on the snake-ball dragon blood congee cooked by Bufang. Now that he thought of the snake-ball dragon blood congee, he couldn't help but drool. Yi Xiling was incomparably disgusted. Look at you. Wait. Brat, what did you just say? Yi Yanqing didn't take it seriously at first, but as he listened, he realized that something was wrong. You're saying that there's a lump of metal following that chef? Yeah, that lump of metal was chubby and very unconventional. I even took a few extra glances at it, Yi Peng said seriously. The cold and thin chef was a chubby puppet, but his culinary skills were superb. Could it be? Yi Xiling, who was beside him, was also dumbfounded. She recalled that the figure she caught a glimpse of seemed somewhat familiar. Could it really be what the F***CK? The muscles on Yi Yanqing's chubby face trembled. Could it be that the chef this brat met was Owner Boo? Owner Boo, this bastard, also came to the 100,000 Mountains? Why did Owner Boo come to the 100,000 Mountains? Could it be for the 10,000 bestial flames as well? Why would a chef like him need the 10,000 bestial flames? The expression on the chubby elder's face became more and more interesting. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. Could it be that Owner Boo planned to use the 10,000 bestial flames to cook dishes? The more he thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Based on Owner Boo's character, he even made a dragon liver popsicle. Using the heaven and earth obsidian flames to cook didn't seem like a big deal. The chubby elder thought about it, but the expression on his face became increasingly strange. Duan Yun followed, behind Bufang. He looked at Bufang's emaciated figure, and then at the lump of metal following beside Bufang. The suspicion on his face became more and more intense. Bufang's cultivation level wasn't high, but his methods were very powerful. Even now, he still shuddered at the thought of that black walk. That black walk was definitely something extraordinary. It might even be a semi-divine tool. However, after thinking about it, he couldn't be sure. What kind of master refiner would be so bored as to refine a wok as a semi-divine tool? Refining a semi-divine tool required precious materials. Usually, the materials used to refine swords, spears, halberds, and the like were more practical. Refining a wok, wouldn't it be crazy? From all these signs, he felt that Bufang was definitely not an ordinary person. Although Duan Yin wasn't very familiar with the southern region, it was still a training ground. Duan Yin, came from outside the southern region. With his cultivation level and the alchemic fire in his body, crossing the 100,000 mountains wouldn't be a difficult task. Could it be that Bufang also came from outside the southern region? Was his goal also the 10,000 bestial flames in the 100,000 mountains? The more Duan Yin thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. The 10,000 bestial flames was a heaven and earth obsidian flame. It was something that could only be chanced upon and not sought. This time he was well informed and knew that this training ground had this heaven and earth obsidian flame. That was why he came here. He wasn't the only one. Many geniuses also came to this training ground for this heaven and earth obsidian flame. The southern region was just a small place at the edge of the hidden dragon continent. Normally, it was a training ground for the big sections. Since it was a training ground, it was obvious from the name. The southern region was a training ground used by the big sects to train their juniors. Duan Yin didn't belong to this big sect. He snuck in because the 100,000 mountains was huge. It wasn't difficult for him to sneak in. Do you know where the 10,000 bestial flames is? The two of them walked in the gloomy forest. They were surrounded by ancient green pines. Fallen leaves covered the ground like a layer of cotton-padded jacket. Some of the leaves were even rotting and emitted a sour smell. Occasionally, small figures would scuttle past the ancient trees. They were the low-grade spirit beasts that lived on the ancient trees. I don't know. I'm here for the 10,000 bestial flames. I was looking for trouble with the people from the Clear Sky Pagoda to find out the whereabouts of the 10,000 bestial flames. But before I could get any information, you ruined my plans, Duan Yun said with a pained expression. He really felt that he was undeserved. He was still in a daze after being hit by Bu Fang's walk for nothing. But don't worry. Once a heaven and earth obsidian flame like the 10,000 bestial flames is born, it will definitely cause a huge commotion. When the time comes, we could just follow the commotion and find it. That way, we won't have to meet the disciples of the big sections, said Duan Yin as he flicked his gray hair. If it wasn't for the several large lumps on his forehead, this flick of his hair would have looked quite flashy. The heaven and earth obsidian flame was about to be born. Naturally, there would be many people competing for it. The competition would be intense. Bu Fang took a step forward. Suddenly, his nose twitched. He smelled a fragrance mixed with the smell of decay. There's something good. Bu Fang's eyes lit up. He followed the direction of the fragrance. Duan Yin was taken aback. What was going on? He mimicked Bu Fang and sniffed, but he didn't smell any fragrance. Following behind Bu Fang, Duan Yin made several turns. The forest was filled with towering trees. Even a road seemed a little crowded. But after a few turns, a glimmer of hope suddenly appeared in front of them. Suddenly, the view before him widened. Bu Fang widened his eyes as he stared at a clearing in the distance. It was a vast clearing. Not a single blade of grass grew around it. Even trees couldn't enter the area. It was as if they were isolated. In the center of the clearing, there was a small purple tree. Purple flower blossoms bloomed on the tree, and a few purple fruits hung from it. The fragrance that Bu Fang smelled came from this small tree. This is the purple cloud fruit tree. There's actually a purple cloud fruit tree here. Duan Yun widened his eyes in excitement. The purple cloud fruit tree was an 8th grade spirit herb. The purple cloud fruit it bore was also a precious 7th grade spirit herb. It wasn't easy to find such an item. Moreover, the most important thing about the purple cloud fruit tree was not the fruit or the flowers, but the juice within. When the trunk of the purple cloud fruit tree was cut open, a light purple liquid would gush out. That was the juice of the purple cloud fruit. It tasted delicious and was a precious spirit liquid used for recovery. Duan Yin was very excited. He took a step forward, intending to rush toward the purple cloud fruit tree. However, Bu Fong was very calm. He glanced at Duan Yun, then looked at the white skeletons scattered around the clearing. Suddenly, he blinked. Chapter 342. Her sparkling, jade-like feet stepped on the fallen leaves that covered the forest path. The fallen leaves on the ground slightly sunk into the ground, but not a speck of dust landed on her feet. The pitch-black leaves accentuated the whiteness of her tiny feet. Her well-proportioned calves and ample curves made one's imagination run wild. Sovereign, are we going directly to the city where the clear sky pagoda is located? In the quiet forest, a gentle and charming female voice rang out, reverberating unscrupulously in the forest. Why would we go to the clear sky pagoda? We should go directly to the location of the 10,000 bestial flames and wait for the birth of the 10,000 bestial flames. After all, this is a heaven and earth obsidian flame. It will surely attract many people. Let's go ahead of time and let the departed soul orb absorb a few more soul essences. The Shurasek sovereign's voice was hoarse and full of vicissitudes of life. The high priestess' eyes, hidden under her mask, lit up with excitement. Then, the two of them increased their speed. Although the forest was overgrown with trees, every step they took brought them a great distance. In this forest full of strong trees, they did not feel like they were lost at all. Their destination was very clear. Outside the 100,000 mountains, an old man was riding on a withered white bird. He was flying in the sky. He wore a white robe, had white hair, a white beard, and eyebrows. This old man seemed to be white from head to toe. He gave off a feeling of immortality. He sat cross-legged on the back of the white bird. As they approached the 100,000 mountains, the old man slowly floated down from the back of the bird as light as a swallow. He raised his hand and patted the head of the bird. With a melodious chirp, the bird circled in the sky, then spread its wings and flew toward the scorching sun. The old man in the white robe clasped his hands behind his back and slowly descended from the sky. He squinted his eyes as he gazed at the boundless mountains and rivers. The 100,000 mountains is still as beautiful as ever. It's a pity that it hides endless dangers. The old man said calmly. In his eyes, it was as if he could see the illusory shadow of a ferocious dragon surging out from the 100,000 mountains. The shadow of the dragon struggled and roared soundlessly. At its waist, a dazzling ball of light intercepted its body. The old man took in a deep breath. The Tianji Sek's Qi gazing technique allowed him to clearly see the Qi of a mountain. The dragon Qi of the 100,000 mountains was surging violently. However, there was a dazzling radiance around the abdomen, causing the dragon vein Qi to be sucked into that position. That should be the birthplace of the 10,000 bestial flames. Only a heaven and earth obsidian flame could plunder the dragon vein energy of an entire mountain and river. Of course, it was impossible to form a heaven and earth obsidian flame just because the dragon vein Qi had been plundered. There were many other factors involved. However, the elder did not need to know that much. He only needed to know that the place where the dragon vein was blocked was the birthplace of the heaven and earth obsidian flame. The wind blew, causing his white hair to become even more ethereal. Suddenly, outside the 100,000 mountains, a sharp sword Qi whistled through the air. The elder turned his head and looked over with a smile. He saw a sword light speeding toward him. The leader of the sword light was a middle-aged man dressed in an embroidered robe. The man had a dignified face, sword-like eyebrows, and starry eyes. His temperament was like an unsheathed longsword, overbearing and threatening. He flew on his sword at lightning speed. The sword light dispersed, and the speed of the sword gradually slowed down. Soon, the figure appeared beside the elder. White Cloud Villa's Villa Master, Wu Mu, pays his respects to the Celestial Arcanum's Sex Supreme Elder. The middle-aged man politely and respectfully bowed to the elder. The elder smiled warmly and waved his hand. Wu Mu was the Villa Master of the White Cloud Villa, a 9th-grade Supreme Being swordsman. The flying sword beneath his feet was the White Cloud Villa's semi-divine tool, the Cloud Rising Sword. Villa Master Wu's sword intent is getting stronger and stronger. It seems like your cultivation has made great progress. Congratulations. The Supreme Elder laughed. A trace of a smile appeared on Wu Mu's solemn face. After exchanging greetings, the two of them sped toward the mountain and river. Their goal was the 10,000 bestial flames, or rather, to prevent the Shura sect overlord from obtaining the 10,000 bestial flames. After the two of them left, a thunderous roar resounded in the sky once again. Then a gigantic one-legged toad, which seemed to be able to blot out the sun, leaped toward them from afar. Every time it leaped, the ground would tremble violently. It was actually a supreme beast. On the head of the supreme beast, there were several tiny figures. Upon closer inspection, one could see that the auras of these figures were extremely powerful. This was especially true for the leader. Although his body was tiny, his aura wasn't any weaker than that of the gigantic one-legged toad supreme beast. The experts from the godly temple of the wildlands had finally arrived. Bufang looked at Duan Yun with a faint smile. He was too lazy to warn Duan Yun, so he just watched calmly. The area around the violet cloud fruit tree was empty, but there were many skeletons scattered around. These white skeletons were extremely eerie, as if foreshadowing the dangers of this place. Duan Yun was a bold and talented person. He came from outside the southern region, so he naturally wasn't afraid of this training ground. He possessed alchemic fire, and his cultivation wasn't too bad either, so he wasn't worried about the dangers. However, just as he stepped into the empty area, a sense of danger rose in his heart. The ground beneath his feet suddenly cracked open, and a ferocious mouth appeared in front of him, causing all the hairs on his body to stand on end. There was actually an 8th-grade beast here. Alchemic fire surged, and with a loud bang, Duan Yun's figure suddenly shot up. This was an 8th-grade earth dragon. Its entire body was covered with sinister spikes, and its eyes were blood red. Its ferocious mouth was filled with razor-sharp teeth. This earth dragon was like a gigantic lizard. Its movements were extremely swift, and with a loud rumble, it charged toward Duan Yun. Its tail, which was like a steel whip, swept across, intending to break Duan Yun's waist. Duan Yun was instantly enraged. An 8th-grade beast actually dared to attack him. With his alchemic fire in hand, Duan Yun was fearless. His figure swooped down and instantly engaged in a fierce battle with the 8th-grade earth dragon. In an instant, a violent gust of wind and surging waves of fire erupted in the empty area. The dried bones scattered all over the ground were overturned and blown away. The violet cloud fruit tree was still blooming with radiance and fragrance, swaying gently in the wind. An 8th-grade earth dragon. Bufang suddenly realized that this beast was actually using the violet cloud fruit tree as a trap to capture prey. Of course, it could also be said that this earth dragon was the guardian spirit beast of the violet cloud fruit tree. After all, the name of the earth dragon had the word dragon in it, so it was related to dragons. Duan Yun and the earth dragon fought for a long time, but there was still no clear victor. This made Duan Yun's forehead sweat uncontrollably. The more he fought, the angrier he became. This earth dragon had coarse skin and thick flesh, and could even breathe fire. Although it was afraid of his alchemic fire, its resistance was much stronger. After all, Duan Yun was only an 8th-grade war god. Without his alchemic fire, he was naturally no match for an earth dragon. This earth dragon's cultivation was very strong, and it was probably already preparing to evolve into a supreme beast. Roar! With a swing of its tail, it flung Duan Yun out of the open area. The earth dragon suddenly crawled forward, opened its bloody mouth, and roared at Bu Fong and Duan Yun. A foul stench assaulted their noses. Bu Fong indifferently glanced at the earth dragon, then took a step forward and slowly stepped into the area. Green smoke curled up from his arm, and soon, a simple, pitch-black kitchen knife appeared in his hand. This was the golden dragon bone kitchen knife, which was the natural nemesis of dragon-type spirit beasts. With Bu Fong's current cultivation, if he used this golden dragon bone kitchen knife, even a supreme being level dragon-type spirit beast would be suppressed. The earth dragon also felt a sense of danger from the depths of its bloodline, and its malevolent eyes abruptly shrank. Duan Yin stood in the distance and watched in astonishment as Bu Fong prepared to make a move. The alchemic fire in his hand also dissipated, and he was quite intrigued. This earth dragon was very strong, and he wanted to see how Bu Fong would deal with it. Smash it with a wok. This earth dragon's skin was coarse and its flesh thick. Did he think it was Duan Yin? However, the next scene almost made his eyeballs pop out of their sockets. That was because the earth dragon that had fought a bloody battle with him for a long time, the earth dragon that had almost broken his waist, was killed by Bu Fong with just 2 slashes. A resplendent golden radiance emerged, almost illuminating the gloomy forest. Bu Fong carried a giant golden kitchen knife on his shoulder, and his expression was incomparably calm. Beneath his feet was the earth dragon that had been showing off before him. At this moment, this earth dragon had its head and tail chopped off. Dragon blood flowed all over the ground, causing the forest to stink even more. Duan Yin was dumbfounded, and he was completely dumbfounded. He didn't understand, and he was puzzled. 2 slashes? This earth dragon must be fake, right? Bu Fong was merely a 7th-grade battle saint, slightly weaker than him. This earth dragon was full of vigor when facing him, but why was it so weak when facing Bu Fong? Was it because he was too weak, or was it because Bu Fong was too strong? Bu Fong put away the ostentatious golden kitchen knife on his shoulder. He glanced at Duan Yun, patted the earth dragon's giant body, and said calmly, "Carry this earth dragon. Tonight, we'll be eating dragon meat." Chapter 343. With just 2 slashes, he killed the earth dragon that he had been fighting with for half a day. Why was this Bu Fong so powerful? It was simply outrageous. Duan Yin was extremely shocked. There would be no harm if there was no comparison. When he compared his sorry state against the earth dragon to Bu Fong's relaxed and carefree manner, an indescribable sense of disparity emerged in his heart. Bu Fong did not care about what Duan Yin was thinking. He walked around the earth dragon's corpse and slowly walked toward the violet cloud fruit tree. A faint light lingered on the violet cloud fruit tree, emitting a fluorescent glow. A sweet fragrance filled the air, carrying a trace of the unique aroma of spirit fruits. Bu Fong could not help but want to pluck one to taste its flavor. He plucked a violet cloud fruit. This was a 7th-grade violet cloud fruit, and it was brewing with a surging spirit energy. Bu Fong easily peeled off the skin of the violet cloud fruit. The skin of the violet cloud fruit was harder than the tender flesh inside. It tasted dry and a little bitter. It was not delicious. The most delicious part was the flesh inside. The flesh was the essence of the fruit. The flesh of the violet cloud fruit was not purple. Instead, it was transparent like an ice cube, just like a lychee. After taking a bite of the violet cloud fruit, the juice flowed into Bu Fong's mouth. A sweet fragrance lingered in Bu Fong's mouth. It was not bad at all. After quickly finishing the violet cloud fruit, Bu Fong casually took out a blue and white porcelain bowl. The next step was the correct way to open the violet cloud fruit tree. Green smoke lingered and the dragon bone kitchen knife once again appeared in his hand. Touching the smooth trunk of the violet cloud fruit tree, Bu Fong pondered over a spot. Then he swiped the kitchen knife across and easily cut open the shiny bark. When he cut open the bark, a clear, spring-like juice seeped out from the cut. Compared to clear spring water, this juice was much thicker. Bufang placed the blue and white porcelain bowl under the cut, and the juice continuously flowed into the bowl. After collecting a large bowl of clear juice, Bufang used his thumb to lightly press on the cut. The incision closed up, and soon, no more juice flowed out. Duanyun also walked over. He looked at the bowl of purple cloud liquid with excitement. The healing effect of the purple cloud liquid was very good. Even without the healing effect, the purple cloud liquid was also very delicious. It was an excellent drink. Bufang ignored Duanyun's envious gaze. Bufang picked up the porcelain bowl and took a sip. Rumble. Gulping down a mouthful of the purple cloud liquid, Bufang's eyes lit up the moment the liquid entered his mouth. This purple cloud liquid was very cold, as if it had been frozen. It was very refreshing when it entered the mouth. It was incomparably sweet and fragrant. It was a little like the sugarcane juice that Bufang drank in his previous life, but not as sweet. A lingering fragrance lingered in Bufang's mouth, causing Bufang to squint his eyes. The spirit energy within the purple cloud liquid was no less than that of the purple cloud fruit. After taking a sip, Bufang couldn't help but open his mouth and spit out dense spirit energy. A mouthful of purple cloud liquid washed away all the fatigue on his body. Not bad. Bufang was very satisfied. He picked up the porcelain bowl and continued to gulp down the liquid. After a while, the bowl of juice was completely emptied by Bufang. This purple cloud liquid was very thirst-quenching and had an excellent taste. It was indeed a good drink. After digging out the entire purple cloud fruit tree, Bufang stored the spirit herb into the system's dimensional storage. He planned to plant the tree when he returned to the store and use it as a landscaping. While curled up on a chair and basking in the sun, he could get a bowl of purple cloud liquid and slowly drink it. Just thinking about it made him feel very satisfied. Duanyun also wanted to drink a mouthful of purple cloud liquid. However, Bufang ignored him and directly stored the purple cloud fruit tree. This made him feel a little annoyed. Carry this, Earth Dragon. This is our rations for tonight, Bufang earnestly instructed. Then he clasped his hands behind his back and walked in front. Duanyun's face darkened. The Earth Dragon's body was huge. With his cultivation level at the peak of 8th grade War God, it wasn't difficult for Duanyun to carry the Earth Dragon's corpse. Two people, a puppet, and an Earth Dragon's corpse walked in the forest for a long time. The sky gradually darkened, and the scorching sun hanging in the sky slowly set toward the west. The bright red glow lasted for a while before completely disappearing. The heaven and earth once again fell into silence. However, the two bright moons in the night sky were resonating with each other. A bonfire rose up. A big black wok was placed on top of the bonfire. The clear water inside was bubbling. Duanyun sat at the side, occasionally adding some firewood to the bonfire. At this moment, his mind was still unable to calm down. This time, it wasn't because of Bufang's terrifying battle prowess. It was because Bufang had openly cut an incomparably huge earth dragon into pieces of meat in front of him. In the end, the entire earth dragon was only left with a white skeleton. This dissection technique, that knife skill, Duanyun's scalp tingled when he recalled it. Bufang didn't put away the earth dragon skin. This earth dragon lived underground all year round, so its skin was coarse and thick. The skin wasn't very useful, so after Bufang skinned it, he abandoned it. For this meal, Bufang prepared to cook red braised earth dragon meat. Duanyun was a little absent-minded. As he smelled the rich fragrance in the air, as well as Bufang's skillful cooking skills, he couldn't believe that he was in the training ground. This was the training ground, so it wasn't dangerous for the genius disciples of the big sections. However, Duanyun's cultivation wasn't high, so this training ground was still dangerous for him. However, it was the first time Duanyun had met someone who could treat this training ground as his own kitchen in such a relaxed manner like Bufang. The earth dragon meat had a darker color, so Bufang didn't add any other seasonings when he cooked it. The color was already very attractive, sparkling and translucent. The earth dragon meat was very tender after its skin was peeled off. When the translucent meat was placed into a bowl, it would tremble like jelly. Under the reflection of the fire, the meat was glossy and sparkling. Anyone who looked at it would feel hungry. Bufang looked at the drooling Duan Yun and casually tossed him a bowl and chopsticks. After Duan Yun caught it, he looked at Bufang with a strange expression. He carried pots, bowls, ladles, and kitchen knives with him. This Bufang, did he really treat this training ground as his own kitchen? However, he didn't think too much about it. He copied Bufang's actions and picked up a piece of translucent, steaming earth dragon meat and placed it in his mouth. It was fresh and tender like jelly. It was bouncy and bounced against the walls of his mouth, causing his face to be filled with enjoyment. The fragrance of the meat spread in his mouth and flowed into his nostrils. Every strand of fragrance seemed to transform into a thick cotton coat that wrapped around his body, making him feel extremely comfortable. How could this dish be so delicious? It turned out that the earth dragon meat was so delicious, Duan Yun exclaimed in admiration as he ate. His mouth was covered in oil, and his eyes were shining brightly. The more he ate, the more shocked Duan Yun became. The taste of the roasted demonic potato had already exceeded his expectations. However, the skill required to roast the demonic potato was not very high. Even if it was, Duan Yun wouldn't have been able to tell. He could only think that Bufang was lucky and that the demonic potato had an excellent texture. However, this time, the red braised earth dragon meat was truly cooked. His movements were as smooth as flowing water, as though he was drawing a painting. It was 2F** King natural. This Bufang was actually a chef. As a disciple of the alchemy faction, he couldn't even defeat a chef. It was simply too sad. However, even though he was sad, Duan Yun couldn't control himself in front of this delicacy. If there was a first time, there would naturally be a second time. He was once again tricked by Bufang into spitting out his alchemic fire. This time, Bufang actually used his alchemic fire to roast the meat. At that time, Duan Yun refused because he remembered the dignity of an alchemist. However, when he recalled the deliciousness of the red braised earth dragon meat, he felt that the dignity of an alchemist could be discussed later. In any case, he was already forced to roast the sweet potatoes, so what was the point of roasting the meat? Just as the earth dragon meat was roasted by Bufang until it was bright red and translucent, oil dripped down from the roasted meat. A rich, meaty fragrance permeated the air, as though tiny snakes were drilling into Duan Yun's body. Duan Yun, who was spitting out the fire, began to salivate. The smell of roasted meat cooked by alchemic fire was simply too fragrant. The fragrance was too enticing. Duan Yun almost lost control of the fire as he inhaled the fragrance, causing his body to tremble. Bufang furrowed his brows and said, "Calm down and control the fire. Don't be anxious and believe in yourself. You are a professional." Duan Yun was on the verge of vomiting blood. He roared in his heart, "I am not a professional fire boy. I'm a noble alchemist." Just as the roasted earth dragon meat was about to be completed, a violent explosion suddenly erupted from the 100,000 mountains. Flames soared into the sky from the location of the explosion. The flames blotted out the sky and illuminated the dark night like it was daytime. Duan Yun was startled. Could the 10,000 bestial flames have been born? Bufang shot a glance in the direction of the flames. Then, he calmly turned his head and looked at the roasted earth dragon meat. He furrowed his brows. Focus and stabilize the fire. Even if the 10,000 bestial flames have been born, we still have to finish roasting the meat. Chapter 344. The Clear Sky Pagoda. A violent explosion caused the entire Clear Sky Pagoda to tremble. The small city below the Clear Sky Pagoda instantly became bustling with activity. Numerous disciples ran out from their respective training grounds. They were still in a state of shock. They were all frightened by the explosion. How many years had it been since such a terrifying explosion occurred in the Clear Sky Pagoda? What exactly happened? There were many things that ordinary disciples were unaware of because they could not come into contact with people of this level. The 10,000 bestial flames was a heaven and earth obsidian flame that the clear sky pagoda had guarded for a long time. This type of heaven and earth obsidian flame was extremely formidable. If not for the suppression of the 100,000 mountains dragon veins and the clear sky pagoda's array, the entire region would have long been incinerated by the heaven and earth obsidian flame. Only the higher-ups of the clear sky pagoda could come into contact with something of this level. Therefore, when the explosion occurred, many people were still in a state of shock. However, the supreme beings of the clear sky pagoda wore grave expressions as they looked in a certain direction. There, the flames surged to the heavens, illuminating the dark night. It was as bright as day. This scene was extremely terrifying. Yi Yanqing furrowed his brows and stared in that direction for a long time. Then, he let out a long sigh. He arranged for Yi Xiling and Yi Peng to return and instructed them not to run around. Then he sat on the back of the ardent sunbird and sped toward the direction of the explosion. Several figures shot out from the clear sky pagoda. They were all the top experts of the clear sky pagoda. Inside the densely packed 100,000 mountains, a group of people slowly raised their heads. The aura emanating from their bodies was extremely powerful. They were dressed in the same long robes, but it was obvious that they were not disciples of the clear sky pagoda. "Senior brother, is the 10,000 bestial flames about to erupt?" One of them asked with a grave expression. "I'm afraid that even the sect elders are unaware of the existence of a heaven and earth obsidian flame in the training ground. But that's fine. This is also an opportunity for us. If we can obtain this heaven and earth obsidian flame, this training will be perfect. Bei Gongming, will have a higher status in the sect." The leader was a handsome man. His eyes were filled with excitement as he looked in the direction of the fire. The southern region was the training ground of their sect. It was just a training ground for some disciples, and it was not very valued by the sect. However, who would have thought that a heaven and earth obsidian flame would appear in such a neglected area? That was a true treasure. As long as he could obtain it, the benefits to his cultivation would be indescribable. At that time, it wouldn't be impossible for him to become an influential figure in the sect. "Go! We must get the 10,000 bestial flames. Kill anyone who dares to stop us." Greed surged in Bei Gongming's eyes. Then, killing intent gushed out from his body as he led the group of people toward the location where the 10,000 bestial flames were erupting. This concerned his future status and cultivation. How could he, Bei Gongming, not take it seriously? Very good. Slowly weaken the power of the alchemic fire. Just like that, Duan Yun's face darkened. His precious alchemic fire was actually used by Bu Fong to roast meat. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, he had to admit that the aroma that permeated the air was becoming more and more intense. It made him feel hungry, and his stomach rumbled from time to time. The explosions continued. Flames illuminated the sky and blotted out the sun. Both Duan Yun and Bu Fong knew that this was the sign that the 10,000 bestial flames was about to erupt. Duan Yun was very anxious. He naturally wanted to obtain something like the heaven and earth obsidian flames. However, Bu Fong remained calm and collected. His gaze landed on the roasted meat, neither hurried nor slow. There was no sense of urgency at all. It was as if the roasted meat was more important than the 10,000 bestial flames in Bu Fong's eyes. "All right, the roast meat is done. The earth dragon meat roasted with the alchemic fire should taste pretty good," Bu Fong said as he narrowed his eyes after Duan Yun withdrew the alchemic fire. As the earth dragon meat was roasted by the alchemic fire, it became red and translucent. It resembled an exquisite ruby, glistening with oil. Steaming hot air filled the air above the earth dragon meat, accompanied by a rich fragrance, made the earth dragon meat extremely beautiful and greatly increased one's appetite. Bu Fong stood up and stretched his muscles. The grade of the earth dragon meat was quite high. Using true energy to restrain the spirit energy within the meat caused the aroma to be mellow and the oil to be rich. He tossed the roast meat to Duan Yun using a wooden stick. Bufang naturally wouldn't mistreat this kid for spitting out alchemic fire for half a day. Duan Yin excitedly caught the roast meat. As a result, the aroma of the roast meat completely enveloped his nostrils. He was completely intoxicated by it. He didn't even care about the blazing flames anymore. It smells so good. Duan Yin swallowed a mouthful of saliva and exclaimed subconsciously. Bufang held a skewer of roast meat in his hand as he glanced at the intoxicated Duan Yin. He stood up and gazed in the direction of the blazing flames. Without a second thought, he packed up his things, grabbed a skewer of roast meat, and headed in that direction. Duan Yin was licking the oil on the roast meat when he suddenly noticed that Bufang was about to leave. He immediately stood up in a flurry, took a bite of the roast meat, and followed after him. The taste of the roast meat was truly delicious. It wasn't too hard after being roasted by the alchemic fire. It was just tender and soft. It had a fragrant and chewy texture, filling his mouth with the aroma of roast meat. Boom! A loud bang resounded as a terrifying gale whistled past. Many trees in a mountain range were blown away by this gale. A gigantic foot descended from the sky and stomped on a mountain range, causing many trees to explode. A hurricane whistled past, blowing Duan Yin and Bufang's clothes and hair. The two of them protected the roast meat and frowned as they looked at the gigantic one-legged creature. Rumble! The sole leg lifted up once again, and with a sudden leap, it shot into the distance. Its speed was so fast that it only left behind a gigantic footprint on the ground. It was a gigantic one-legged toad that emitted a terrifying aura. That's a supreme beast, Duan Yin exclaimed in admiration. He came from outside the southern region, so he naturally wasn't too curious about supreme beasts. However, it was incredible for a supreme beast to appear in the training ground. I wonder how a supreme beast tastes like. Bufang muttered as he looked at the gigantic one-legged toad. He took a bite of the roast meat, causing the oil to splatter everywhere. Apart from the plump dog in front of his house, this was the first time he saw a supreme beast. Therefore, he couldn't help but feel curious. Duan Yin glanced at Bufang speechlessly. Did this guy only think about eating? A supreme beast was invincible in the training ground. Even the disciples of the big sects wouldn't dare to underestimate a supreme beast. How could such an existence be reduced to food? Duan Yin took a bite of the earth dragon roast meat. He had completely forgotten that the earth dragon meat in his hand was also the meat of an 8th grade spirit beast. The appearance of the heaven and earth obsidian flame has indeed attracted many experts. This one-legged supreme beast actually traveled tens of thousands of miles to come here. Look over there. Duan Yin pointed. There are many people sitting cross-legged on the back of the supreme beast. Moreover, there was a streak of sword light streaking across the sky like a shooting star. There were experts riding on their swords. These people who dared to covet the heaven and earth obsidian flame were undoubtedly supreme being experts. I didn't expect that there would be so many supreme beings in the training ground. This is going to be difficult. Duan Yin felt a headache coming on as he ate the roast meat. Bufang didn't pay any attention to Duan Yin, who was muttering to himself as he leisurely walked toward the location. He had to obtain the 10,000 bestial flames, the heaven and earth obsidian flame. Only with this flame could his culinary skills improve. A good flame with spirituality could bestow spirituality to ingredients. This would be of great help to Bufang's culinary skills. Duan Yin sighed and followed after him. 2 people and a puppet walked quickly. Since they had a specific target this time, with their cultivations, it didn't take them long to reach their destination. When they arrived at their destination, they discovered that many people had already started fighting over the 10,000 bestial flames. Chapter 345. Bei Gongming saw the golden flames from afar. The flames were incomparably dazzling and emitted raging heat. Even though he was still quite a distance away, Bei Gongming could still feel the rich spiritual energy in the air as the flames burned. This was not just an ordinary flame, but a flame of spiritual energy. It was a flame with spirituality. This was the heaven and earth obsidian flame. Bei Gongming was extremely excited. If he could fuse with this heaven and earth obsidian flame, then his cultivation would definitely break through to the intermediate supreme being stage. He might even become a peak supreme being. Moreover, with the heaven and earth obsidian flame in hand, his fighting capacity would be even more formidable. In the faction, he would definitely stand out. If he was given a few more years to refine the heaven and earth obsidian flame, he would even have the confidence to step into the superior supreme stage. At that time, he could be considered an outstanding figure among the younger generation, to become the leader of the younger generation. Therefore, in the face of this heaven and earth obsidian flame, he could not resist the greed in his heart. Just as he was about to charge towards the golden flames, a cry rang out and a flame spurted out from the flaming bird in front of him. This was the scorching sunbird, a type of spirit beast that lived in the land of Yang. On the back of the scorching sunbird sat the chubby old man, Yi Yunqing. The heaven and earth obsidian flames were suppressed by the clear sky pagoda. Now that someone had come to snatch the 10,000 bestial flames, as an elder of the clear sky pagoda, Yi Yunqing naturally would not allow it. The supremacy of the trial ground? Those who stand in my way will be killed. Bei Gongming only had the heaven and earth obsidian flame in his eyes. He glanced at Yi Yunqing and grinned coldly. His cultivation was very strong. Although he was not at the top of the younger generation in the sect, he was not weak and had some fame. Moreover, he was very confident. He didn't place Yi Yunqing in his eyes at all. In his eyes, the supreme beings of the trial ground were nothing more than a bunch of country bumpkins. The people in the trial grounds were a group of slaves raised by their sects to raise the strength of their sect's disciples. If a slave dared to attack his master, then he could go to hell. Boom! Bei Gongming started to circulate his cultivation technique, and a pair of white wings of light suddenly extended from his back. The wings of light unfurled, and many feathers formed from spiritual energy fluttered down. Buzz! With a loud explosion, Bei Gongming's body shot out like a bolt of lightning toward Yi Yunqing. Both of them were supreme beings. However, Yi Yunqing was merely a primary supreme being. After his first clash with Bei Gongming, his entire body was sent flying like a bomb. He fiercely slammed into the ground and shattered a small hill into pieces. Bei Gongming laughed coldly. His face was ice cold. His cultivation method was of a much higher level than Yi Yunqing's. Naturally, he could crush Yi Yunqing easily. The heaven and earth obsidian flame must be mine. This is an opportunity that belongs to me. Bei Gongming flapped his wings and stood proudly in the sky, laughing. Suddenly, the sound of something tearing through the air could be heard. Numerous experts from the Clear Sky Pagoda rushed over. Among them, there was also a supreme being expert with an extremely powerful cultivation. He drew his bow and shot an arrow. The arrow brought with it a dazzling radiance as it shot towards Bei Gongming. The people from the Clear Sky Pagoda were proficient in archery. Their arrows were extremely powerful. However, Bei Gongming's cultivation was even stronger. It was unknown what those wings of light were, but they were incomparably sturdy. They enveloped his entire body, and the light arrows shot by the Clear Sky Pagoda expert exploded upon contact with them. The disciples who came with Bei Gongming also shot out and engaged in a fierce battle with the experts from the Clear Sky Pagoda. These people came from outside the southern region. Their cultivation methods were of a higher level. Although their cultivation levels weren't very high, they were able to fight against opponents of a higher level. Although the disciples from the Clear Sky Pagoda had the advantage in numbers, they were still suppressed and forced to retreat. In terms of high-end combat power, the Clear Sky Pagoda was completely crushed. Bei Gongming seemed to have gone mad. With a flap of his wings of light, his entire body flashed like a shooting star. The two primary supreme beings from the Clear Sky Pagoda were completely crushed, and their auras fluctuated unsteadily. Grandfather, Xiling is here to help you. All of a sudden, a thunderous roar resounded from the depths of the forest. An arrow wrapped in lightning bolts shot toward Bei Gongming like a shooting star. Its target was Bei Gongming, who had unfurled his wings of light. Bei Gongming's hair fluttered in the wind, and his expression turned serious. He punched out and shattered the lightning arrow. However, his entire body was also blasted far away by a tremendous force, and his fist was a little numb. A semi-divine tool. Bei Gongming's pupils constricted. In the midst of the forest, a graceful figure wielding a blue longbow could be seen. Lightning arrows converged on the bow. Yi Ziling's heroic spirit surged. She loosened her slender fingers, and the lightning arrow whistled through the air once again. This was the semi-divine tool of the clear sky pagoda, the thunder rush bow. Bei Gongming let out a long howl. Even though it was a semi-divine tool, he didn't fear it in the slightest. He continued to suppress the two supreme being experts. Bang! The place where the flames erupted was a sunken pit. Flames flickered within the pit, and pillars of spirit energy shot up into the sky. Roars suddenly resounded throughout the 100,000 mountains. Everyone in the midst of the chaotic battle was startled. Then they saw spirit beasts with blood-red eyes crawling out of the deep pit. These spirit beasts all emitted an extremely irritable aura. The people in the midst of the chaotic battle split up and began to deal with these irritable spirit beasts. The number of spirit beasts was uncountable. Most of them were low-grade spirit beasts, but there were also many 6th and 7th grade spirit beasts. As for 8th grade spirit beasts, they were the overlords of a region. Although they were few in number, they were still present. The number of spirit beasts was simply too great. In an instant, the surrounding area was plunged into a chaotic battle. Cries resounded through the air. 2 intense sunbirds flew out of the pit of fire. The experts of the clear sky pagoda were startled. The beasts are beginning to riot. It seems like the 10,000 bestial flames are about to come out on top of a towering tree. The barefooted high priestess and the black-robed Shura sect overlord spoke calmly. The departed soul, orbs in their hands, emitted a dense gray radiance as they absorbed the wailing spirit essences and remnant souls in the air. Some of these remnant souls belonged to spirit beasts, while others belonged to humans. It was all in their favor. Above the vault of heaven, a silhouette that blotted out the sun suddenly appeared. A gigantic foot descended from the vault of heaven and ruthlessly stomped on the ground around the pit of fire. Frightening waves of air spread out in all directions, killing many low-grade spirit beasts. The 9th grade supreme beast, the one-legged toad, had finally appeared. The one-legged toad was incomparably huge. Its 2 large eyeballs rolled around. All of a sudden, the croak of the toad resounded like a thunderclap. Countless spirit beasts exploded amidst the croak, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Even many humans were sent flying by this croak, spitting out blood. Bei Gongming's eyes were filled with ruthlessness. He flapped his luminous wings and hovered in the air. The 2 supreme being experts of the clear sky pagoda were also hovering in the air, battered and exhausted. They were extremely fearful of this gigantic one-legged toad, supreme beast. Its combat prowess was simply too terrifying. Just as the might of the one-legged toad was spreading in all directions, a scarlet fire dragon slowly crawled out from the pit of fire. Its entire body seemed to be ablaze with flames, and the might of a dragon enveloped the area. It was incomparably terrifying. Another supreme beast. Moreover, it was the guardian spirit beast of the heaven and earth obsidian flames. At this moment, 2 supreme beasts had already appeared. A sword light flashed past. An imposing figure stepped on his sword and calmly hovered in the air. A white-robed, white-haired, white-browed elder also stepped on the air. His back was hunched as he watched from afar. Hiss, hiss, hiss. In the distance, atop an ancient tree, a wriggling figure coiled around the trunk of the tree. The figure soared up and gazed ahead. It was actually a serpent woman. Moreover, it was a serpent woman. Her green hair fluttered in the wind, and her face was so beautiful that it could take one's breath away. Even the Serpentine sovereign rushed over from afar. The White Cloud Villa's villa master, Wu Mu, chuckled as he rode on his semi-divine tool, the Cloud Rising Sword. He gazed at the beautiful Serpentine sovereign with a complicated gaze. Oh my God, why are there so many Supreme Being experts here? There are even 2 Supreme Beasts. How are we going to collect the 10,000 bestial flames? Duan Yun stared blankly at the experts who had appeared in the sky. The auras of these experts were incomparably powerful, and every single one of them made him shudder in fear. These were all Supreme Being experts, and Duan Yun was no match for them. Duan Yun was so anxious that he even forgot to eat his roasted meat. He didn't expect that there would be so many Supreme Beings in the training ground. With so many Supreme Beings here, he didn't even have the slightest chance of obtaining the heaven and earth obsidian flames. He had miscalculated. Bufang remained calm. The heaven and earth obsidian flames were extremely precious, so it wasn't strange for them to attract so many Supreme Being experts. Leaning against a towering tree, Bufang calmly ate his roasted meat while observing the situation in the training ground. As time passed, the solemn atmosphere in the air became even more intense. The flames within the pit of fire also became increasingly scorching hot. Chapter 346. Croak. The gigantic one-legged toad let out a croak, and everyone felt their hearts skip a beat. This was the might of a supreme beast. Each and every one of its movements could cause a change in one state of mind. Numerous spirit beasts crawled out of the fire pit, and many other spirit beasts emerged from the surroundings of the forest. In an instant, the surroundings of the pit of fire turned into a world of spirit beasts. It was as if the crowd was surrounded by a tide of spirit beasts. The experts of the Clear Sky Pagoda didn't pay much attention to this tide of spirit beasts. Having lived in the 100,000 mountains, they had witnessed spirit beast tides since they were young. They were no longer surprised by it. Moreover, they were well aware that the appearance of the tide of spirit beasts was caused by the 10,000 bestial flames, which had cut off the 100,000 mountains' dragon vein. The energy of the dragon vein was the source of spirit energy in the mountains. Spirit beasts needed spirit energy for their cultivation. Every time the 10,000 bestial flames went berserk, the source of spirit energy in the 100,000 mountains would be cut off. As a result, the surrounding spirit beasts had to rush to the pit of fire to exchange for spirit energy. Once the spirit energy of the spirit beasts entered the pit of fire, it would be cleansed by the 10,000 bestial flames. Then, it would spew out spirit energy. This spirit energy was extremely dense and pure. To the spirit beasts with low intelligence, it was like a drug that they couldn't stop. This was the origin of the 10,000 bestial flames. It absorbed the spirit energy of the numerous spirit beasts in the 100,000 mountains and formed the heaven and earth obsidian flames. Its might was unparalleled, even though the densely packed spiritual beasts had completely surrounded the area. Everyone present had high cultivations. They were all top-notch, supreme being experts from the various major forces. Naturally, they were not afraid of the spiritual beasts. When one of the spirit beasts let out a deep roar and began to spit out essence energy at the fire pit, the other spirit beasts followed suit and began to spit out their own essence energy. This essence chi was a little misty, even a little hazy, like a layer of fog. It wasn't obvious when one spirit beast spat out spirit energy, but it was obvious when hundreds of spirit beasts spat out spirit energy, not to mention when tens of thousands of spirit beasts spat out spirit energy at the same time. The spirit energy that soared into the sky was so dense that it almost turned into liquid and dripped down. These essences floated above the fire pit like a layer of mist, slowly moving. Suddenly, a huge suction force gushed out from the fire pit. Then, the essence energy was slowly sucked into the fire pit at a speed visible to the naked eye. In a short while, it was completely absorbed. This peculiar scene caused everyone to hold their breaths, anticipating what would happen next. Surging golden flames slowly rose from the fire pit. Around the golden flames, there was a formless beast roar. The beast's roar sounded like a dragon's roar, a tiger's roar, an eagle's cry. The roars of hundreds of beasts were included in it. It was very strange. Furthermore, the shape of the golden flame was also constantly changing. Sometimes it was a lion, sometimes it was a fierce tiger, and sometimes it was a meandering dragon. These scenes endowed the flame with a different spirituality. This flame seemed to have absorbed the spirit of tens of thousands of beasts to form its own truth of fire, which was the heaven and earth obsidian flame. Therefore, the difference between a heaven and earth obsidian flame and an alchemic fire, or an ordinary flame, was the spirituality of the flame. Bei Gongming's pupils reflected the 10,000 bestial flames, or more specifically, the seed of the 10,000 bestial flames. At this moment, the 10,000 bestial flames had just been born. It wasn't like some of the older heaven and earth obsidian flames that could incinerate anything. His flame energy wasn't huge, so he still had to carefully nurture it. Bei Gongming wanted the 10,000 bestial flames, because only with it could his strength improve tremendously. The temptation of this flame was too great. The wings of light behind him flapped. Ignoring the surrounding supreme beings, Bei Gongming transformed into a bolt of lightning and sped toward the resplendent 10,000 bestial flames. He wanted to snatch the 10,000 bestial flames before anyone else. However, just as he made his move, Yi Yanqing, who had been paying attention to him, also made his move. Surging true energy erupted from their bodies. Yi Yanqing caught the thunder sprint bow that Yi Xiling had tossed over. This was a semi-divine tool. A semi-divine tool in the hands of a supreme being expert would possess boundless might. A bolt of lightning shot out, but it suddenly stimulated everyone present. The gigantic one-legged toad rolled its eyes and stared at Yi Yanqing and Bei Gongming. Then it opened its mouth and flicked its tongue. An inexplicable sound of something piercing through the air rang out. There was almost no sound of friction between the tongue and the air. Boom, boom. However, Bei Gongming and Yi Yanqing were extremely vigilant. The two of them moved swiftly in the air and managed to dodge the one-legged toad's tongue attack. The one-legged toad croaked and swiped its gigantic claws at the two of them. In the eyes of the gigantic one-legged toad, the two of them were as insignificant as mosquitoes. Bei Gongming and Yi Yanqing were enraged. How could they be intimidated by a mere supreme being toad? Both of them charged toward the gigantic toad. Just like that, two humans and one beast engaged in a fierce battle. Dazzling rays of light shone in all directions. Boom, boom, boom. A scarlet fire dragon crawled out from the pit. Its cultivation had also reached the supreme being level. The fire dragon roared and spewed out billowing flames from its mouth. Its might was astonishing. Rip! A beam of sword light descended from the sky and headed straight for the 10,000 bestial flames. A surging and sharp sword intent instantly surged out and enveloped the surroundings. The fire dragon roared and spewed out flames. It flapped its wings and soared into the sky. It glared at Wu Mu with a murderous look in its eyes. Although the Serpentine Sovereign had the body of a snake, her speed of movement was extremely fast. The Serpentine Sovereign had a face that was more exquisite than most human beauties. Her green hair wriggled in the air like tiny snakes. Her gigantic serpent tail swayed from side to side as she moved at high speed. Her target was also the 10,000 bestial flames. For serpent people, the 10,000 bestial flames was even more important. As serpent people, they had to molt every time they wanted to make a breakthrough. As their cultivation grew stronger, the amount of energy required to molt also increased. The amount of energy required for the Serpentine Sovereign to molt was unimaginable. After all, the Serpentine Sovereign was already a supreme being expert. If she wanted to break through to a higher realm, she had to molt. Once she succeeded, her cultivation would rise to the next level. The Serpentine Sovereign also needed a catalyst to molt, and that was the 10,000 bestial flames. The remaining Supreme Being expert from the Clear Sky Pagoda also made his move. He couldn't just watch as the Serpentine Sovereign snatched away the 10,000 bestial flames. At the same time, the Wildlands expert on top of the one-legged toad's head also charged out. A chaotic battle broke out in an instant. Moreover, it was a battle between Supreme Being experts. Bu Fong and Duan Yun watched from afar. They were also surrounded by a group of spirit beasts, so not even a drop of water could trickle through. That was why they were standing on top of a tree. They weren't far from the pit of fire. Everyone was also caught in an undeserved calamity. Several spirit beasts roared and pounced at them. With a flick of his mind, Duan Yun's alchemic fire surged and transformed into streaks of flames around his body. As the streaks of flames shuttled back and forth, they obliterated the spirit beasts one after another. Duan Yun's combat prowess was very strong. After all, he possessed a special alchemic fire. His alchemic fire couldn't compare to a heaven and earth obsidian flame, but it was much stronger than ordinary flames. It was even easier for Bu Fong to deal with these spirit beasts. Or rather, he couldn't be bothered to deal with them. As the green smoke curled up, the pitch-black dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. With a flick of his fingers, the dragon bone kitchen knife twirled in his hand as he easily twirled it. A terrifying dragons might burst forth from the dragon bone kitchen knife. The spirit beasts that were midway toward him were so frightened that they wet their pants and fell to the ground with a thud. Therefore, not a single spirit beast was able to approach Bu Fong. Duan Yin was once again dumbfounded. What kind of technique is this time? He merely twirled his knife and scared the spirit beasts? How could it be so showy? The densely packed spirit beasts continued to roar and howl. The essence energy they spat out became increasingly dense and surged into the golden flames. After being baptized, the essence energy was transformed into majestic spirit energy that gushed out and nourished the spirit beasts. As the process progressed, the golden flames' radiance became increasingly resplendent. It was so resplendent that it resembled a blooming flower bud. Leaves fell one after another, and a small bundle of pale, golden flames was clustered at the forefront. The seed of the 10,000 bestial flames had finally appeared. The Shura sect overlord, Duan Ling, who had been standing motionless in the distance, suddenly lit up. A terrifying aura erupted from his body in an instant. This aura was like a raging gale that engulfed everything in its path. Everyone who was engaged in battle was startled. The Shura sect overlord gazed at the spiritual flame that hovered above the other bundles of flames. His eyes were filled with desire and excitement. His entire body trembled with excitement. He took a step forward, treading on the void, and slowly walked toward the flame. Chapter 347. The seed of the 10,000 bestial flames floated quietly in the air. It was exquisite, small, peaceful, and beautiful. It was like a harmless flower bud, quietly hovering in the air, emitting a brilliant radiance. Many warriors who were engaged in battle gazed at the cluster of flames. In an instant, their hearts were filled with excitement. That was the goal of their trip, the seed of the 10,000 bestial flames. As long as they could obtain this heaven and earth obsidian flames, many of their cultivations would receive a huge boost. As a disciple of a sect located outside of the southern region, Bei Gongming also attached great importance to this heaven and earth obsidian flames. This was a rare treasure of heaven and earth. No matter where it was placed, it would be an eye-catching treasure. The Shura's Gate Overlord's aura erupted like a raging storm, causing everyone present to feel a wave of pressure. This pressure made everyone's hearts sink. The warriors of the Clear Sky Pagoda stared at the Shura sect overlord with solemn expressions. Facing this legendary figure who stirred up the winds and clouds of the southern region, everyone's hearts were filled with apprehension. Stop right there. This heaven and earth obsidian flames belongs to me, Bei Gongming. Bei Gongming saw the Shura sect overlord Duan Ling approaching the resplendent 10,000 bestial flames. His eyes instantly turned bloodshot. He bellowed and punched at the Shura sect overlord. Buzz, the Shura sect overlord, calmly glanced at Bei Gongming and took a step forward. In an instant, his figure had crossed several feet. Pitch-black true energy appeared around his body. This true energy seemed to be able to distort the air around him. Bei Gongming's punch arrived in front of the Shura sect overlord. However, it was smoothed out by an invisible force. His punch, which contained the true energy of a supreme being, was dispersed just like that. Bei Gongming's heart skipped a beat. His punch was not weak at all, yet the black-robed man before him easily withstood it. Was this really the country bumpkin supreme being of the training ground? Duan Ling lifted his head. His eyes were as cold as ice. Traces of murderous intent slowly circulated around his body. Anyone who dared to snatch the 10,000 bestial flames from him must die. The 10,000 bestial flames must be his. Boom! As Duan Ling stomped down, the air seemed to tremble from his stomp. A surging wave of energy spread out. Then, Duan Ling's figure flashed and appeared in front of Bei Gongming. Their eyes met. Bei Gongming's eyes were filled with confidence and disdain, while Duan Ling's eyes were filled with ice-cold, killing intent. A mere supreme martial artist of the trial grounds sure has guts. Bei Gongming widened his eyes, and the aura on his body rose steadily. His cultivation method revolved faster and faster, causing his aura to become even stronger. Training grounds? Duan Ling's eyes, which were filled with killing intent, froze for a moment. Then, the corners of his mouth curled up. Are you from the Grand Baron sect? Bei Gongming's heart skipped a beat, and his mind became chaotic. How did this person know about the Grand Baron sect? Who are you? Bei Gongming roared as he hurled the ball of light in his hand. Duan Ling curled his lips in disdain and swiped his claw, which was suffused with true energy. The ball of light was immediately shattered by his claw. Terrifying energy gushed out and exploded between the two of them. A figure was ruthlessly smashed down from the sky and slammed into the ground with a loud bang, causing the entire ground to tremble. The disciples of the Grand Baron sect are still so conceited. It really pisses me off. Duan Ling cracked his neck. The black robe on his body was also torn apart by the explosion, revealing the silver armor on his body. The armor emitted a silver glow and peculiar waves of true energy, giving off an immense pressure. With a flick of his finger, a stream of true energy shot toward the direction where Bei Gongming was sent flying. Then, Duan Ling shifted his target to the 10,000 bestial flames. The 10,000 bestial flames was a heaven and earth obsidian flame. It was extremely important to him. The departed soul orb was a semi-divine tool of the Shura sect. However, this semi-divine tool was very peculiar. Unlike other semi-divine tools, it did not have sufficient offensive capabilities. To the disciples of the Shura sect, the departed soul orb was the best divine tool for cultivation. Once the hundreds of thousands of spiritual essences and remnant souls were refined by the heaven and earth obsidian flame, the surging spirit energy would be fed back to the owner of the departed soul orb and aid him in his breakthrough. Duan Ling's current cultivation level was at the peak of the Supreme Being realm. If he wanted to break through to the Supreme Being realm, he would have to take the risk and use this method. The spirit energy in the southern region was too scarce. If he wanted to cultivate to the Supreme Being realm under normal circumstances, it would take him a long time. He did not have that much time to waste. A sword chime resounded through the air. The sword beam shot out and forced back the scarlet fire dragon that was crawling out of the pit of fire. The White Cloud Villa Master, Wu Mu, pointed his cloud, rising sword at Duan Ling. He could not let the Shura sect demon obtain the 10,000 bestial flames. He had to stop him. In the distance, the white-haired and white-browed supreme elder of the Celestial Arcanum sect finally made his move. Several jade talismans appeared in his hands. He injected several streams of true energy into the talismans, and they flew toward the Shura sect overlord, Duan Ling, celestial arcanum demon array. The supreme elder's aged and solemn voice reverberated through the air. Wumu also let out a roar. Thousands of sword beams rained down from the sky like a waterfall. River-piercing sword. The combined attack of the two Supreme Being warriors was aimed at the Shura sect overlord, Duan Ling. A terrifying pressure filled the air, forcing many to retreat. This was a battle between the true top experts of the southern region. Regardless of whether it was the Shura sect overlord or the supreme elder of the celestial arcanum sect, they were both experts who stood at the pinnacle of the southern region. Bei Gongming crawled out of the ruins in a sorry state. He gazed at the battle in the sky with an incredulous look in his eyes. Why are there so many Supreme Being warriors at the peak of the Supreme Being realm in this training ground? Damn it! Even though Bei Gongming was a disciple of the Grand Baron sect, his current cultivation level was only at the mid-stage of the Supreme Being realm. How is it possible that there were so many Supreme Beings at the peak of the Supreme Being realm in this training ground, which he viewed as a backward and barbaric place? Numerous jade talismans blossomed in the sky, forming a gigantic magic array. This magic array enveloped the Shura sect overlord, turning the area pitch black, as if it had transformed into the night sky. Shooting stars streaked across the night sky. Each of the jade talismans was occupied by a resplendent star. The river of sword chi descended from the sky. It didn't damage the magic array in the slightest as it headed straight for Duan Ling, who was enveloped by the magic array. As the river of sword chi entered the magic array, it seemed to have received a great boost. Its might actually became several times stronger. Old man from the celestial arcanum sect. You can't stop me this time. Duan Ling coldly stared at the white-haired and white-browed supreme elder of the celestial arcanum sect. With a roar, all the true energy in his body soared up into the sky. The pitch-black, true energy formed a tornado, engulfing the sword energy that was pouring down on him. The scene suddenly became somewhat spectacular. The river of sword chi mixed with the pitch-black true energy was like a roaring wind dragon, shocking everyone's eyes. Bang! A loud explosion resounded. Amidst the roaring tornado, a figure tore through the air like a beam of light. He tore a hole in the magic array and dashed toward the location of the 10,000 bestial flames. The Supreme Elder bellowed angrily. Wu Mu also brandished his sword and chased after the figure. A delicate shout rang out from the void. Numerous blood-colored jade talismans rained down from the sky. They seemed to transform into a heavenly net that blotted out the sky and blocked the Supreme Elder and Wu Mu's path. The High Priestess of the Shura sect had made her move. Damn it, you demonic woman! Wu Mu was enraged. He slashed out with his sword. The sword light was like a dragon, bombarding the blood-colored jade talisman net. This demonic woman is proficient in magic arrays. She is a Supreme Being magic array master. Let me deal with her. The Supreme Elder of the Celestial Arcanum sect had a solemn expression on his face. With a flip of his wrist, a white jade talisman appeared. He crushed it and scattered it toward a spot in the blood-colored jade talisman net. Soon, an opening appeared in the net. Wu Mu nodded and rode on his sword. He passed through the jade talisman net and chased after the Shura sect overlord. The High Priestess wanted to stop him, but the Supreme Elder stopped her. The two magic array masters began to collide with each other in the void. The flames burned fiercely. As they approached, the temperature became higher and higher. Duan Ling stared at the 10,000 bestial flames with excitement and greed. The 10,000 bestial flames had just taken shape, so its might wasn't strong. If it were a fully matured heaven and earth obsidian flame, they wouldn't even be able to approach it. He took out the grayish-white departed soul orb and held it in one hand. The departed soul orb was filled with dense smoke. Every wisp of smoke was a soul essence. Upon closer inspection, One could even see distorted and ferocious human faces. Duan Ling's mind was connected to the departed soul, orb. He could feel the desire coming from the orb. He pinched his hands together, and the departed soul, orb transformed into a white beam of light. It floated above the 10,000 bestial flames and emitted a surging spirit essence. A beam of sword energy descended from the heavens. Duan Ling's face turned cold. He didn't try to dodge it and forcefully took the attack head-on. He couldn't dodge it. If he did, the sword energy would destroy the departed soul orb. You want to die? I'll grant you your wish. Pitch black, true energy pervaded the air. Duan Ling suddenly turned his head and charged toward Wu Mu with a surging killing intent. The two of them engaged in a fierce battle in the void. The 10,000 bestial flames pulsed silently. The departed soul, orb hovering above Duan Ling, continued to emit spirit essence. The spirit essence was incinerated and transformed into wisps of spirit energy that converged within the departed soul orb. Bufang stuffed the last piece of roasted meat into his mouth. His mouth was covered in grease. The taste of the roasted earth dragon meat was indeed delicious. The texture of an 8th-grade spirit beast was not bad at all. Duan no longer held any hope for the 10,000 bestial flames. He held the roasted earth dragon meat in his hands and sat to the side. He ate as if there was nothing left to live for. He wanted to turn his sadness into appetite and savor this delicacy to his heart's content. Bufang looked at Duan Yun and then at the frightening battle between supreme beings taking place in the distance. The monstrous flames illuminated his face. The corners of his mouth curled up stiffly on his gaunt face. Bufang exhaled softly and stood up. He patted Xiao Bai's plump belly, then strode toward the distance. Xiao Bai rubbed his round head. A glint flashed in his red eyes as he followed behind Bufang. A man and a puppet dashed toward the location where the supreme beings were fighting. Duan Yun watched in a daze. A piece of roasted meat fell from his mouth. Are you out of your mind? There are so many supreme beings fighting. What is a 7th-grade battle saint like you doing there? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.